our fellow councillors who will be making decisions with me this evening. On the left are officers who will present cases, advise us on any technical matters, and we can ask questions of after we've asked applicants and objectors in the first part. There are. I'll go on to sort of say the running order, just so people know when their cases might be coming up. But we will probably try to go it's quite a heavy agenda, so things might move quite fast. Excuse me. So first, any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Are there any other declarations? Yeah, Councillor Ortiz.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare first in relation to the application for 11 Old Manor Yard, agenda item S048, that I was made aware of the application by one of the objectors, but haven't discussed it and come at it with an open mind. And I also wish to make a declaration in relation to agenda item S060, that I received an email from one of the objectors with a document. I responded to say that I'd received it, but again, I approach with an open mind and haven't discussed the application.
Yes, and I think, is this referring to the letter from the applicant? Yes. So I think I will declare it hasn't affected my decision. I still look at this with an open mind, but I declare that I received that letter as well, and maybe I'm just looking. I think we all received, just for the notes, we all received that letter. Thank you. The next part is minutes of previous meetings. I have got 3 sets of minutes, which I will just ask if I may sign. The first, Councillor North was on. That's agreed. I'll sign that. The second set, which we've been seeing before, I chaired that, and Councillor North was on. That's agreed to sign that as well. Thank you. And the third, I chaired, and if there are no objections, I will sign that as that's done. Okay. I'm just going to run through the order this evening, so you can get an idea about when things will take place. We'll start with St Mark's Road, and then Mallard Street, Melbury Road, Catherine Mews, Lancaster Road / Ladbroke Grove, and Brompton Square. Those are the speaker cases. And then the non-speaker cases, we will have Hazelwood Tower, Edenham Way, Queensdale Road, Old Manor Yard, Flood Street, Cadogan Place, Cadogan Lane, Stewart's Grove, Fleming Close, Gloucester Road, and Harrods. Right, okay. So we're now ready to move on to hear the first item, which is we'll hear from officers on flat A 95 St Mark's Road, please.
Sorry, we're just seeing if the screen is working. Apologies. Thank you. We're up and running now. So the first item is 95 St Mark's Road. The site is within the Ladbroke Conservation Area, and just to highlight, the addendum report corrects reference to the wrong conservation area. So just to confirm, it's definitely in the Ladbroke Conservation Area. So we have the site location plan on the left and the aerial view on the right. And what you can see in the aerial view is the small alleyway that's adjacent to the existing extension at the property, and it's in the other properties as well, with a small courtyard that's to the rear of the main property and the extension. The proposal is for a rear extension into this alleyway and partially into the courtyard at the rear. The proposals originally, when submitted, were also for works to the front garden, but these have been removed from the application since submission. So we have some site photos looking at the rear elevation. So you can see the existing bay window at lower ground and ground floor level, and then the right-hand side image, you could just about see the entrance to the rear alleyway. And then these are two photos looking down the alleyway towards the rear of the property, and then the courtyard that is at the rear of the property. So here we have the existing and proposed lower ground floor plan. So the top drawing is the existing layout and the bottom drawing is the proposal. The pink lines around the lower drawing show the proposed demolition, and the thick black lines show the proposed extension. So it runs into the alleyway and then partially into the courtyard, so still retaining the bedroom window within that courtyard. That's that. And then here we have the existing and proposed rear elevation, showing the existing bay window and the proposed extension with the new doors. The officers consider there's no impact on residential windows or nearby properties due to the constrained nature of the location of the extension in the alleyway. The construction impacts can be covered by condition 4 with the submission of a code of construction plan. Design is acceptable given its lower ground floor location and its rear location. There are a number of objections received regarding party wall issues, and these are covered by party wall legislation rather than planning legislation. Similarly, structural issues are covered by building control legislation, and any freeholder or leaseholder issues are private matters that are not covered in planning legislation. So the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and that's the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I've just noticed on the objector and the applicant list a sort of a timing error. So I just wanted to say before I call the objectors and the agent that each of you have a total of 3 minutes each. There was a sort of confusion on the timing there. So. If that's understood okay by Emma Dentcote and Alex McNeil, is that all right, for 3 minutes each? And then 3 minutes in total for the objectors and 3 minutes for Mr. Poole as the agent for the applicant. Okay. So, yes, we hear from Emma Dentcote and Alex McNeil, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will be speaking on behalf of 95 St Mark's Road. I saw the applicant briefly in November, soon after they bought the flat, and suggested they speak to freeholders first to agree a satisfactory way forward. The offer wasn't taken up, and the first informal meeting we had was after we saw the notice on a lamppost. In effect, there has been no consultation worthy of the word, which is a shame. The external works that are the subject of this application involved demolishing 3 structural walls holding up the rear of the house, and this isn't going to be agreed by the directors of the house. Relating to the extension of the stables next door, the stables was a separate 2-storey block and the works were a very modest reworking of an existing lean-to. Our terrace is otherwise unmodified at ground level. We disagree that the works would not harm the 2 mature trees to the rear. The roots would be very much threatened by new foundations to the proposed extension. We don't agree that the extensions would not be readily visible within the area. To the contrary, the 8 flats that overlook the light well and the flats to the rear on Bassett Road and the neighbours at number 97 will be very much affected by these uncharacteristic additions. Relating to the Code of Construction Practice, the applicant has suggested that my family moves out for the duration of the demolition of the 3 structural walls beneath my home. So it's clearly acknowledged that there will be unacceptable levels of noise and disturbance. Everybody at number 95 works from home, and our 13 immediate neighbouring homes include a poorly elder receiving home care, a small baby, and a shift worker who sleeps during the day. Construction codes were designed when most people went out to work, and they're outdated. The extensive glazing would not only cover the side extension, but also the extension into the light well, creating light and noise pollution for the 8 bedrooms overlooking the light well. This would form the kitchen to the rear of the living room and would undoubtedly create unwelcome disturbance 2 metres from my daughter's bedroom. We are also concerned about the lack of plans to reorganise the downpipes and sewerage that land where there's the precise spot plan for the kitchen, and about the lack of clarity for the SUD system. The applicant has just moved in and we are neighbourly. We have no issues with them. We've been told the architect is working on alternative plans for the rear of the building, so we're not sure why we're here. It seems the applicant has been poorly advised. The application will not enhance the character or appearance of the building in a conservation area and will have a very negative effect on our living conditions, both during and after construction. We ask you please to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Poole.
Thank you very much. My name is David Poole, Chartered Town Planner, speaking tonight on behalf of the applicant. This proposal was driven by a desire to improve the quality of the residential accommodation and sensitively renovate the property while preserving and enhancing the character and appearance of the host building and the conservation area. A fundamental necessity for the renovation is addressing a severe, long-standing damp and water ingress at lower ground floor level. A specialist survey has identified extensive salt ingress, defective external render, standing water and below-ground water penetration requiring remedial works. This scheme not only enables the quality of the accommodation to be enhanced, but provides for a comprehensive waterproofing solution, including improved drainage and modern breathable construction methods that provide a permanent remedy to the long-standing damp issue. Local Plan Policy GB1 supports the sensitive retrofitting and maintenance of existing building stock to prevent fabric decay and improve thermal performance. This proposal secures the long-term structural integrity of this home and indeed those above it. The rear and side extensions works are modest, subservient and confined strictly to the lower ground floor at the rear. Using high-quality brickwork to match the existing building and carefully considered detailing, the proposal integrates with its surrounding and preserves the character and appearance of the conservation area, fully complying with the local plan's conservation and heritage policies. We fully appreciate that alterations to properties of this nature draw interest from immediate neighbours. A major focus of the initial objections concern the front garden, and you've heard that the applicant has listened carefully to officers and indeed the neighbours and formally withdrew these works to the front garden during the application, as confirmed in section 4.2 of the officer's report. The silver birch tree remains untouched and the existing arrangements are retained in full. Neighbouring amenity has been carefully safeguarded. The glazed roof over the side passage is set deep at lower ground floor level and enclosed between existing walls. Officers concluded that this will not result in harmful light spill, but will allow the quality of the existing accommodation to be improved. Construction impacts have also been addressed. Working hours, site operations and construction noise will all be controlled through Condition 4, requiring approval of a site construction management plan before any works commence. Finally, regarding references to freeholder consent or licences to alter, as noted in section 7.2 of the officer's report, these are private legal matters entirely separate from planning. The applicant will, of course, follow all appropriate legal procedures regarding such matters and is indeed instructed solicitors and professionals in this regard. Chair, this is a carefully considered proposal that delivers a significant improvement to the living conditions, secures a long-term future of this historic building, preserves the character of the conservation area and protects neighbouring amenity. We respectfully ask that the committee endorse the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, questions to the objectors or the applicants? Who would like to go? Councillor North first.
Thank you. Good evening. I've got 2 questions to the applicant and 1 to the objectors, if I may. Mr. Poole, you state in your statement just there that the water ingress is a major problem for you at the moment, and this is partly your remedy of that. Is it the case that this could be remedied without the need for this extension? There are other applications and methods of building to resolve that problem that you didn't need to do this particular scheme. Is that correct?
So the application was submitted at the outset. Obviously, the applicant hadn't moved in at the time. She has recently done that. One of the issues centrally underlying and driving the solution for the works at the rear is to address the damp issue. It's not solely the only means of it, and it doesn't form part of the applicant's case on submission. It is a point that's simply noted in response and a driver for the submission. It will require quite extensive remedial work regardless.
And my other question is, was raised by the objectors about lack of consultation. Can you confirm or not that there has been no consultation or no real consultation on this application?
Councillors, the application was submitted in December during a period when the council was undergoing significant delays as a result of the data breach. The timings of the application when it was submitted was unknown. It was held up months in terms of the application being pended before it was put forward. The application has been consulted on, as the objectors noted. They have spoken to the applicant. She has a desire to work constructively with her neighbours to bring forward proposals.
Sorry, you misheard my question. I didn't mean consultation with the council. I accept the cyber attack has affected that. I'm in consultation with the freeholder and immediate neighbours. That's what I meant. Direct between the two parties.
My understanding is there has been conversations since the application has been submitted, yes.
Then I'll ask the same question to the objector, Ms Dempcode. You said in your statement that there had been none, so obviously there's a discrepancy here.
There was no consultation before the notification went up on the lamppost, which we just by chance spotted. Can I make a point about the damp? The property until last weekend, was it weekend before last, has been empty since April last year. The vendor was made aware of the fact that there was overflow running from the toilet and did nothing about it. And I also warned the new owner that that the toilet, it is still overflowing. It's been overflowing for over a year, and it drives me to distraction. It is just a ballcock or something in the toilet which is leaking, and it is endlessly leaking day and night, which is shocking in a water shortage. But the damp has come from that, and that's neglectful in my book.
Thank you, noted.
Further questions from councillors? Councillor Goldfinger.
Thanks. This is for the objectors, Ms Dempcode. You've noted that the works obviously are going to be demolishing some structural walls. After speaking with the applicant, have you been made any clearer as to structural engineering capacities for support, making sure that you're safe? You've mentioned that you might have to leave the property during this. Can you explain a bit further what you mean by that?
Yes, thank you. There was an engineering report which was almost impenetrable. I couldn't work it out at all, to be honest. I'm sure that work has been done. The fact is that the three or four supporting walls at the back of the house are going to be demolished. As I say, we all live and work in the building, and I am immediately above that. It would be completely intolerable. And the owner had said, well, you could move out, and who pays for that is irrelevant. She said, I would cover that. I don't just stay there, I live and work there. So that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. It is clearly going to be extremely disturbing to have that kind of work there. And also we're mid-terrace, we're worried about the structure, but that's another issue, I know.
Thank you.
Councillor Dodd-Noble.
Can I ask a question to the officers after?
Yes, we'll after hearing from applicants, after questions, those questions, then we'll close. We'll close and we go to officers, but that's fine. Just so from my side, just so I understand this case. Is the applicant I think Mr. Poole said that that the applicant will go through all the normal legal processes to achieve sign-off. Is the applicant aware that that sign-off might not take place? I was just curious if the applicant is aware that that this might not get sign-off, but they're still going ahead with the planning application. Just want to see their thoughts on that.
Certainly, in terms of the procedural hurdles involved with any building application, any building project, it involves a number of statutory processes to go through. Planning permission is just usually the first hurdle as part of that process. There are other elements in terms of the applicant wishing to proceed with works at the site if they have to be altered with the benefit of planning permission having been granted. If they have to be revised or changed, then obviously they're quite open to look at that as part of the process.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now I think we'll now move on to questions to officers, because we've heard that's been helpful from both sides to hear that. Can I just start trying to distinguish for our assistants to officers? We're deciding tonight the planning case for this, but it's completely outside of our powers to start looking at the construction and the engineering side, the legal side, which is will this get freeholder permission or not, and any other controls. Just want to make sure that maybe you can guide us as to what's in scope for our decision tonight in this particular case.
Yes, thank you. We can consider some construction impacts, which is why we do the condition about Code of Construction Practice. But anything that's specifically covered by the legislation, so our environmental health colleagues have controls over noise issues, and they have their own limitations on when noisy works can be carried out, for example, and they have their own legislation. So we're not allowed to do anything that's covered by another legislation. In terms of building control, then that's their legislation that deals with the safety and the construction matters. And then the freeholder and leaseholder matters are private matters that aren't covered by planning legislation either. So that's why we've got a limited condition in terms of the Code of Construction Practice, because that's the only place that we can sort of get involved.
Yes, and party wall that you mentioned earlier, that again is between the applicant and the license for alteration, and that is where something like working hours, working conditions, etc., can also be raised, as well as how any impacts from the construction might result surveys before and surveys after. So our sort of task tonight is to actually have a look at purely the things that planning can control. And just to help me, this is officers are comfortable that the changes proposed are within the bounds of reasonableness for a lower ground floor in this area.
Yes, thank you. In terms of design and amenity are the main considerations from a planning point of view. It's a very constrained location where the extension is, so there's a boundary wall. The alleyway is very narrow. Acknowledge that there are windows to the rear elevation to other units, but given how small the extension is and how small the roof lights are, we consider there'll be no light pollution. Similarly, in terms of design, it's unfortunate that there's a bay window that's being changed, but it's at a lower ground floor rear elevation, and it's something that we approve quite regularly in terms of rear extensions in design.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? Got Lloyd North, and I think Councillor Dodd-Noble also wanted to go, and then anyone else can as well. So Councillor North first.
Thank you. I've just got two areas of question which I'd like reassurance on. One is to do with the trees and one is to do with the heritage aspect. So with the trees, it looks to me, and by the pictures here, that there are palms there. Can we just be confirmed? And I know the tree officer has, in the report, has said that there's no concerns. Can we just be reassured, because it was brought up by the objector tonight, that there are no concerns and the trees that are there look like to be palm trees?
Yes, whilst the objector was speaking, I was just looking on the online file. The tree officer, the tree at the the front of the house, the property, I think is protected by virtue of being in the conservation area. It may even have a TPO on it. All the trees are protected by virtue of being in a conservation area. And I can, they've looked at the information, they've looked at the proposals, and they haven't suggested any conditions that we need, and they're satisfied that the trees won't be affected, or that if they are, they're not such high quality trees that they're worthy of protecting.
Thank you. That gives me that reassurance. On the more substantive part is the impact to the conservation area. On the report 6.9, it does talk about the fenestration detail is acceptable. My question really is, from a conservation area perspective, is this the original layout as it was with the bay as it is, and your officers consider that the damage to the conservation area is minimal, even though it's squaring off to be a more modern design with modern fenestration?
Yes, I'm just sharing, if it works again. This is the aerial view. So in terms of, as much as I can tell here, the properties all look like they do have the bay windows, seem to be original, but you can see the property next door, which has had some extensions. So it's quite normal to have more modern lower ground floor rear extensions with more glazing than the traditional bay windows.
Thank you.
My question was actually answered by Councillor Mackover's questions.
Thank you, Councillor. And then Councillor Goldfinger.
Thank you, Chair. If I can take officers to the recommended conditions, and Councillor Mackover may have already answered my question with his question, but can I understand the reasoning behind not having a considerate constructor's scheme or a professional management of engineering works condition for an area that is a conservation area?
Yes, the professional engineer condition is normally only for basement extensions, so that's supervised. It's a suitably qualified person to supervise basement excavation works. The considerate contractor's condition, I think, is normally for more large-scale works. I don't see any reason why we couldn't add it, though, if that was requested.
I was just wondering whether under Code of Construction Practice in Condition 4, whether that checklist would then result in needing that needing to be done, because the construction management team would then assess the proposed construction works. So effectively, it is being the checklist will show all of the conditions and making sure that that could be done in a constructive way. I'm just wondering whether that would typically cover it.
I think they're slightly different conditions. I'm just looking at another case because later on in the agenda we do have both of them. So there is no reason, there's no reason why we couldn't have both, but Fiona's just going to...
Considerate contractors is usually applied to basements, large major sites where we get them to sign up to that code, if you like, and then it's published on the front. So it's slightly different. The Code of Construction Practice is something relatively new where we get the sites monitored. So they sign up, they have a checklist, they pay a bond, and we monitor the works and make sure it's being managed successfully to reduce the impact as far as possible. So two different things, and I think for the scale and nature of this proposal, the Code of Construction Practice is the correct one to apply in terms of managing the impact on amenity.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Yes, Councillor Goldfinger, please.
Sorry, just one question. One of the decisive issues that was brought up was the insurance of good living conditions, which I think the objectors are bringing to, and something that they keep discussing is the idea of the load-bearing walls as they're going to be disrupted. Is there any concern from the officers that the demolition of these load-bearing walls may actually have disruption to the rest of the house? And is there anything that we can do to support them to limit said kind of divisiveness?
Yes, that's the structural integrity of the property and the safety. That's covered by building control legislation. So that is something that we cannot overlap with them on. once it gets to the building control stage, they will have to be satisfied that it can be constructed safely and the impact in terms of the structural stability.
Thank you. But is there anything potentially that we can do in terms of the scheduling, like certain days that it can't be done during holidays or weekend? Well, obviously not during weekends, but that we maintain at specific times because it can be quite disruptive to the residents. Is that something that we can recommend?
That's covered by the Code of Construction Practice, and that's covered by environmental health legislation. So they have the hours of operation covered by their legislation. I think it's 8 in the morning, and it restricts it on Saturdays and Sundays. So, yeah, that's the different legislation. Yep, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
And just out of interest, probably every single case in our pack is going to be disruptive, and no one would really look forward to the work taking place in and around anyone's homes. So it's something that people have to work around through mechanisms they've got in party wall or the code of construction practice. But it is there's no doubt, just expressing to any objectors here today, it is disruptive, but it's not something that we can stop through the planning process.
No, thank you. Just thinking about planning of specific walls or spaces, but it makes sense in terms of construction practices. So, thank you.
Are members got any further questions, or people are happy to move towards a decision? If there are no more questions, I'll say, look, this is one of those ones that that we all live in close proximity to each other, and people have building works done. Some of them are very disruptive, others are worrying, but actually get done quite fast. There's lots of professional involvement because of the checks that officers have talked about, and in this particular case, it may be that the freeholder or the license for alteration is never granted at all. We're just looking at the planning aspects, and I think what we've heard tonight, and the reason that officers are recommending to grant is that the application is acceptable on that basis. So for that, can I see, with an officer recommendation to grant, can I see those in favour of granting? Okay, so 95 St Mark's Road, Flat A is granted. Thank you very much. Now move on to the second case, which is 32 and 32A Mallard Street.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I begin my presentation, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report and the update to the officer's report. The application site before members this evening relates to number 32 and 32A Mallard Street, identified by the red arrow on the slide before you. The application seeks planning permission for the construction of a mansard roof extension, rear ground floor infill extension, and new timber-framed double glazing. The application site includes 2 residential dwellings and is located to the northern side of the highway. The site location plan can be seen on this slide. Members can note the relationship with the rear of the properties along the Vale, with my cursor just here. In terms of heritage assets, the site is located within the Chelsea Park Carlisle Conservation Area. The building is identified as a positive building within the appraisal document. Positive buildings make a positive contribution to the historic and architectural character of the area. In terms of listed buildings, I've identified the listed buildings surrounding the site in pink on this slide. As set out within the officer's report, the application building itself has been considered for listing by Historic England, and Historic England have recommended not to add it to the list. Historic England have confirmed that the building does not have sufficient historic fabric to hold such special interest for a building for a purpose-built dwelling for an artist. The existing front and rear elevation can be seen on this slide. and the proposed front and rear elevation can be seen on this slide. I would draw members' attention to the mansard roof extension in this location here, and on the proposed rear, I would draw members' attention to the blue dotted line, which denotes the existing projection in this level. In terms of the existing and proposed ground floor plans, the existing ground floor plan is shown on the upper image and the proposed ground floor plan on the lower image. Again, I would draw members' attention to the extension located within the red circle on the slide before you, and the blue line denotes the layout of the existing extension in this level. In terms of the proposed third floor plan, so the mansard, this just shows the proposed layout. It would be used as a bedroom in association with the residential unit at the upper floors of the building. In relation to the section, this is the existing and proposed section A. The existing section can be seen on the left-hand side and the proposed section on the right-hand side. Again, I would draw members' attention to the proposed mansard and the profile in this area here with my cursor, and members may be able to note the change to the rear extension here. Just some site photographs to show you. So the existing front elevation, and an existing photograph of the rear, and members can note the existing rear projection at ground floor level in this area here with my cursor. In terms of the streetscape, this image I took from the heritage report submitted with the application. I thought it was helpful to show the existing building within the surrounding streetscape and the proposed with the mansard level there. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions set out within the report, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have speakers, objectors and agents applicant. So first can we hear, and you have 3 minutes together, of Christine Harwood and Paul Vellet. Just say where you are so I can find you.
Here.
Oh, right, thank you very much.
Can you? Yes, that's working, yes. I'm afraid Mr. Bellaway can't join me this evening, unfortunately. So, okay. Well, good evening. I represent the owner-occupiers of the listed 28 Mallard Street and other neighbours who object to this application. We urge your committee to refuse planning permission on the grounds of heritage and residential amenity. At the very least, the application should be deferred, as the errors and other deficiencies in the officer's report would make a grant of planning permission vulnerable to judicial review. I trust that you have read my letter to committee and the supplementary report of Paul Velaway, heritage expert. The law is that all representations on a planning application need to be considered and fully assessed as part of the decision-making process, regardless of when they are submitted. These two documents detail material considerations of significant weight which are not addressed in either the officer's report or the presentation that you've heard this evening. Turning to our objections to this application, number one, heritage. This property is an artist's studio home. Images all over the internet evidence that it has been preserved as an artist's studio home until last year, when purchased by the applicants. Therefore, your own council's SPG on artist studios and local plan policies on external works to artist studios are engaged. However, the application has not been assessed against those. The Victorian Society and Historic Buildings and Places each expected to comment on the proposals in detail. They have not been given that opportunity. Mr. Velaway's report identifies numerous deficiencies in the officer's report, including that it has not responded to the points raised in his previous report. Specifically relevant local and national policies are neither referred to or applied. There are key issues that need to be explored and reasoned conclusions reached. The report appears to lack the benefit of a specialist conservation officer. Turning to the impact on neighbours' residential amenity, The submitted daylight and sunlight assessment contains significant omissions, most notably the failure to assess the roof light serving the artist studios at 28 Mallord Street, the former home of Augustus John. The application documents have not taken into account overshadowing that may arise from the increase in height and bulk associated with the proposed mansard roof. Therefore, the proposals conflict with policy CD9, living conditions, and the general objectives of BRE guidance when properly applied in a functional context.
Thank you. You've come to your 3 minute section, in fact. But,
At the very least, the application should be deferred so that a proper consideration of the issues may be put before your committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll pick up something on questions on this. Now for the applicant, Alex Graham and Andrew Richards. Just looking around. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name's Alex Graham. I'm the agent for the application. I'll just briefly address these three principal concerns that we've heard today. First, on heritage and character and appearance. The proposals are modest changes to this building and reflect its character as a former artist studio, keeping the large windows and roof lights that served those spaces formerly. The new mansard is confined to the front part of the building only, set back from the facade and below the ridge line of the existing roof. It uses high quality materials that respect the host building, and within a street characterised by a wide variety of building forms, styles, roof shapes and heights, this is a modest and subordinate addition that sits very comfortably within its surroundings and preserves the conservation area. Secondly, residential amenity. The daylight and sunlight assessment demonstrates that all assessed neighbouring windows retain good levels of light and pass the BRE guidance against all tests, including sunlight. The objector has argued that the assessment is deficient because some roof lights at number 28 were not assessed. However, those roof lights were excluded because the lighting expert that produced the report considered, given their position, orientation and separation from the proposed extension, they could not experience any noticeable effect. That must be correct because when we look at the other windows that are within the report and that are closer and directly facing the application site, these all pass the BRE tests or show no reduction at all in terms of sunlight and daylight. The same is true for the rear windows and the roof lights on number 30. There is no change at all. The suggestion that the assessment is therefore unreliable and cannot be used or relied on for a decision is simply not borne out by evidence. The space that's referred to in 28 would remain exceptionally well lit and would be unaffected. Your officers have reviewed the evidence and reached the same conclusion. And just lastly, thirdly, on use, it's suggested that the application site should be treated as an artist studio, which it formerly was and how it was originally built. However, no artist has occupied the building for several decades, and importantly, the council has recently granted a certificate confirming the lawful use of the property as two dwellings, which it will remain as. The planning status of the building is therefore clear and not a matter of dispute. In summary, if I have time, officers have carefully considered all the issues raised, and their conclusion is that the proposal complies with the development plan. It is a properly considered report and shows that there are no unacceptable impacts to neighbouring amenity or the conservation area. This is a well-designed adaptation of a building.
Time limit. Yeah.
Oh, I've reached my end. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Just to keep it even. So it may be again. I think we were getting the point, but it may be coming up in questions.
Okay.
But I'm just keeping it very tight on timing, just so we keep it equal. Yes. So question, please, from Councillor Dodd-Noble.
Thank you, Councillor Mackover. This is a question for the agent and applicant. Although it's not a listed building, it's definitely a handsome building. What experience have you got, and how will you ensure that it remains in keeping with the current structure that's there in terms of materials and other parts? Thank you.
Probably best to let the architect answer.
Yeah. Hi, Andrew. Nice to meet you. The brickwork will be to match the existing. The roof is currently a bitumen roof that we're proposing to take the bitumen off, reinstate the original pan tiles that would have been there, that have been covered over since the 50s. Windows will be painted timber. The mansard is set back. It's set behind the chimneys. And the rest of the materials will be matching the existing.
And I think I mentioned it when I spoke, but the main northern-facing part of the building, which is where the northern light for artists came from, with the large glazed windows, is all remaining. We're not looking to change that.
Who else? Yes, Councillor Goldfinger, and then anyone else go as well.
This is for the objector. I just had a question about the mansard roof extension. You mentioned that it would be overbearing and not in keeping. But if you look at the other houses along the street, it doesn't seem like they have a similar types of roof or kind of height. So could you just explain to me what you mean by it wouldn't be keeping in with the actual keeping of the street?
Well, that's a key heritage point, and I'm afraid I'm a solicitor, and Paul Velouet, our heritage expert, was unable to attend this evening. But I would refer you to the documents that he's submitted where he considers in detail it's the original features of the property as an artist's studio home. So he considers that it would be have inappropriate impact on the property itself, which is still an asset, even though the decision has been made not to list it because it had essentially been gutted in recent months. And then the impact upon adjoining listed buildings, such as 28 Mallard Street, and then other properties in the vicinity and the conservation area as a whole. And I'd also draw attention to a point in the applicant's own heritage statement, which draws attention to the importance of the difference in heights between, for example, the listed 28 and the non-listed 32, each of which were a key artist studios' homes, and, so important in the development of Mallard Street and Chelsea as an artist's area.
Thank you.
Are councillors content to move on to questions to officers? Yes, thank you. Who'd like to go to officers first? Councillor North.
Thank you. Reassurance on heritage again on this one. It's been raised by the objectors, understandably, as Councillor Don Noble said, this is an extremely handsome building in a conservation area, and it's a sensitive development. I'm sure even the applicants would recognise that. The report for me was a little bit light on clarification on that, because there's a question mark over various societies, historic buildings, places, Victorian societies, and I just need reassurance from our conservation area officer that this is acceptable within the terms and doesn't detract from that conservation area.
Okay, thank you for your question. So just to re-emphasise, the building is located within a conservation area, and within that conservation area is identified as a positive building, so it does make a positive contribution to the historic and architectural characteristics of that designated heritage asset. In terms of the listing, so as mentioned and as mentioned this evening, it has been considered by Historic England to be listed in its own right, and Historic England have issued a report, I think dated on the 8th of June, confirming that it isn't as such a high quality to add it to the list. In terms of from the officers' report and the comments received from the Victorian Society and the other bodies, they were before the report was then given by Historic England. So the Historic England advice report came in after. In terms of our overall assessment, officers are satisfied that the designated heritage assets would be preserved and that there would be no harm. That includes the character of the building itself, the surrounding conservation area, and also the setting and the nearby listed buildings.
Thank you.
And just to pick up on that, we've heard from the objector concerns over the roof form, but we also, I think, was picked up during questions, is that this isn't a uniform terrace by any means. How did officers look at the impact given the variety of buildings in the vicinity?
Thank you, Chairman. You're correct. So I've just put the aerial image back on. I don't know whether it's quite clear enough to pick up some of the roofscape. So the roofscape within the terrace and the grouping itself is varied. There are dormer windows and additions within the immediate and surrounding context. In terms of the roof alteration, officers consider that it is sympathetic to the historic character of the building and therefore complies with policy CD12, which relates to roof alterations. Again, I would draw members' attention perhaps to this section, which shows it more clearly in terms of the mansard profile, how it will just be located on the front of the building, and it has been set back from the front parapet as well.
Thank you. Other questions from councillors? Maybe just while people are thinking, we heard from the objector that they felt the report didn't fully consider all the things which should be considered. I just wonder whether we can just pick up on that and hear from officers that this is the usual and the regular amount of assessment, because reports can't necessarily cover everything, but just you're working on what we need to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Chairman. So, correct. So the way in which the officer's report has been set out is our non-decisive issues and our decisive issues, which is how we set out our committee reports. For the decisive issues, they're really the key considerations. And in this application, it is the impact to the conservation area listed buildings, and then also the impact in terms of living conditions. It has been mentioned this evening in relation to the daylight and sunlight report. That has been reviewed and considered by officers, and it does show that it wouldn't have a material impact on the surrounding residential properties. So those key considerations in terms of character and appearance and living conditions have been set out in full within the officer's report. And I would say for the kind of the nature and the scale of the proposal, it's proportionate to that.
Any other questions, or are councillors ready to move to a decision? Okay. So taking into account what we've heard tonight, what's in the report and what's in the addendum report, the officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour, please? So 32 and 32A Millard Street is granted. Thank you very much. And now move on to 47 Melbury Road. Christine, could you just pop your microphone off so that we could, because it changes our perception. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, before I begin my presentation this evening, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report and some updates to the report before you. The application site relates to number 47 Melbury Road, and the aerial image can be seen on this slide. So the application before members this evening seeks a variation to condition 2 of a planning permission granted in 2019. There is a associated listed building consent due to the works, some listed walls, so they will also need to be considered in turn. The application seeks to vary condition number 2, which is the approved drawings. And on the slide at the moment is the approved and proposed site plan. So the application in 2019 granted planning permission for the erection of a new building. That building would have 2 residential units. This application, again, seeks to propose 2 residential units. However, members can note that the footprint and the location of the building has been moved, so it's sited further away from the boundary wall. So again, I will show this is what was approved in 2019 and implemented, and this is what is proposed before members this evening. In terms of the proposed floor plans, I will show these on the following slide. So this is the proposed ground floor plan. So members can note the proposed residential unit, in this location here and this location here, where the floor areas mirror themselves. There will be an open area associated with both the units to the rear of the property, and I will show that with my cursor in this area here. In terms of the approved and proposed first and second floor plans, these can be seen on this slide. So again, members can note the change to the footprint, which has reduced the size of the unit. In terms of the approved and proposed roof plans, again, this can be seen on this slide. Again, that just shows members the change of the siting of the property and also its size. In terms of elevations, the approved or the previously approved application is on the left-hand side, and the proposed elevations can be seen on the right-hand side. The application does include the construction of a single-storey basement. That was also included in the 2019 scheme. Members may have noted as part of the officer report that an updated CTMP and sweep of information has not been provided as part of this application. However, officers have recommended conditions to require an updated CTMP to be provided prior to the commencement of any works. The approved lower ground floor or basement plan can be seen on the left-hand image, and the proposed basement can be seen on the right-hand image. So again, members can note the slight reduction in the footprint and the location of the patio gardens to the rear in this area here. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions set out within the officer's report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have objector and the agent applicant to speak. So for the objector, I've got Mr. Bagraktarovich. Apologies if I got that anything right or wrong. Thank you.
No, that's pretty good. Okay, good evening. My name is Sarah. I'm just here on behalf of Maria, as she's abroad and she couldn't attend. But I spoke to her and she has few concerns. She doesn't have any concern about the houses themselves, so that's all okay. But she has concern about the access to the garages at the back of 55, because each flat at 55, I think there are 6 garages there. And I'm just looking at the plans. And the first house on the left, their garden protrudes quite a bit onto the road, so I mean this will not be realistic for the car to do the turn right, because car needs to go, because I actually go there very often, car needs to go a lot more to the left in order to make a right turn. And the other concern she had is about there are only 2 parking spaces for 2 3-bedroom houses, which is, she thinks that that will not be enough. It will block constantly access to 55, as she has 2 garages and the flat there. And the second concern is about heating or cooling system, which will be on the right side, which will be close to the houses, so she's concerned if that will create noise to the flats. Otherwise, she doesn't have any concerns about the houses, so just to amend the plans to the access and parking spaces. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Tracy Rust, please.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm the applicant's planning agent. As your officers referenced in their presentation, there is an implemented planning permission for the construction of a building on this site to create 2 new houses. The approved building is 2 stories with basement and mansard roof. This revised proposal, reducing the footprint of the building, has come about because of the shared access driveway and the neighbours' concerns about access to their own garages at the rear of their building, known as 55 to 57 Melbury Road. Whilst due regard was had about the shared access during the design process for the 2019 scheme, the footprint of the proposed building, now before you for consideration, has nevertheless been significantly reduced to address these concerns with the neighbours, and the building will be much further away from the access to the neighbouring garages. It is worth noting that the implemented larger scheme can still be completed, and the seal liability in this respect of more than £122,000 has already been paid in full to the council. The fallback position of completing the development is a material consideration when deciding on this current application, which seeks only to reduce the size of the building overall. The proposed building, while smaller in footprint, is similar in design to that previously approved, as demonstrated in the schematic drawing shown on page 5 of your officer's report. The new building would still maintain 2 new single-family dwelling houses, contributing to the delivery of new homes in the borough. The houses will be 2 storeys with basement and mansard roof. They have been designed to be lifetime homes, fully accessible, and meet the requirements set out in the nationally prescribed space standards. With regard to the basement, this development is not so different from that previously approved, i.e. it is a new building that sits on its own, far removed from any other building in the vicinity, with a smaller basement to reflect the smaller above-ground building. There will be no material impact, therefore, on the structural stability of other buildings in the surrounding area. This proposal still retains a high-quality building that respects the townscape character of the surrounding area and protects the heritage assets in the vicinity in accordance with development plan policies. We trust you will agree with your officer's recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from councillors while they're looking through? I've actually got one, and obviously we've got things we can pick up with officers as well on swept paths and other things. But as this is, as you say, quite an old application, and there've been some changes. I just wanted to. We've gotten a recommendation for an updated CTMP, and also I noticed that there's not yet a discussion of updating a construction method statement. Would your client, would the applicant, find it acceptable to just make sure that those 2 plans, which obviously help everyone, are up to date and reflect the changes in positions and any changes in structure, because the buildings are slightly different shapes now?
Yes, certainly. If you consider that a further condition will be necessary for a construction management plan, then we would have no objection to that.
Yes, it would be. I think the method statement as a basement. But I think
yes.
there might be one in the past, but obviously times move on, and there
indeed.
may be different structures. So just everyone's got a good set of paperwork for building control. Thank you. Questions from colleagues? Don't have to be, but it's all very clear. Yes, Councillor Ortiz, and then Councillor Goldfinger.
To the applicant, and forgive me if this isn't a question that you can answer, but in the original image, I can see the chestnut tree, but then in the proposed image, I can't see a chestnut tree. Can I ask where the chestnut tree has gone, or if it's still there?
Your officers might be better placed to answer that for me now. Now, I was involved with the 2019 scheme, but it was a long time ago. And there were a number of trees that were permitted to be removed as part of that 2019 scheme. Now, because that planning permission has been implemented and works had started, any of those trees that were permitted to be removed at that time will have been removed by now. So that may be why it's not shown, but I can't actually guarantee that, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. I think we'll move to questions to officers now. Just for the benefit of people up on the panel here, this is slightly unusual in that this is already an implemented consent, and therefore this is a variation which forms a new planning consent, but it gets around some of the objections, or gets around the objections that we've heard about the path for the cars and parking for the cars. We heard from the objector that there was a concern that the cars would find it hard to turn. And the other concern we heard from the objector was that there may be plant noise. I see that there is our usual condition that we have, which is effectively, if it can be heard, then it must be switched off. And this is operating on nearly all of our sort of air conditioning and plant conditions. But just on the swept path, are officers satisfied that there is sort of a clear way that that people can access their own driveways and garages?
Thank you, Chairman. Correct. Officers are satisfied that there won't be an impact in terms of highway movements within the site, and the updated proposal has been reviewed by the highways team. I would just note that I think it was raised in relation to car parking and potential impact with car parking. So our Transport and Streets SPD just set out a maximum car parking requirements, and that is for houses for the first 3 dwellings, whereas this is 2 dwellings, would be 1 per dwelling. So it would meet that maximum car parking standard. And also there is also going to be a section 106 to ensure that the 2 new dwellings are permit free as well in relation to parking on the highway. So yeah, officers and highways team have reviewed it in relation to the impact on car parking, potential intensification, and also manoeuvring within the site, and we're satisfied.
Thank you very much. Just seeing if my colleagues have any questions. I've got. I mentioned to the agent for the applicant that I thought and I'll get my views from my colleagues as well, that it might be prudent just to make sure, given how construction traffic management plan is in the conditions to be updated, which I think everyone would welcome, but for the construction method statement as well. It wouldn't be unusual, given this is a basement, to make sure that's in order. Is that something that officers would find acceptable to add on as a condition?
Thank you. If members consider it necessary, then it is definitely a condition you can add on. I would suggest that we look at the wording for condition 5, which requires within 3 months of the date of this permission an updated CTMP to be provided. So it may be that members consider 3 months a reasonable time as well, and it could be within 3 months of the date of any permission an updated CMS to be provided. Thank you.
Colleagues, the method statement, given its basement, just because this is quite a big change from what's already consented, is that something that you would support in just adding that into conditions? Yes. So I think that will come. Any more questions, or are people ready to move to a decision? Okay. So I think this is slightly unusual in that it is a variation on something that's already been started, so there's a fallback position. That the objection seemed to be satisfied by what officers have said. I'm suggesting, and it looks like we were agreeing, that we would add the condition for the updated construction method statement within 3 months, like the traffic management plan. So with that added condition, can I see those in favour of granting? Okay. So that is, Melbury is granted. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to 1 St Catherine Mews.
Just before we move on to 1 St Catherine Mews, we have got the associated.
You're quite right. I noticed it and ignored it. Yes. So this is a listed building. This is a listed building application as well, which comes at the back of it. Officer recommendation is to grant. I don't think there are any issues from my point of view on this. So can I see those in favour of granting listed building consent? So that is also granted. Apologies to officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll move on to 1 St Catherine Mews. Just pull up the report, sorry. Here we go. Again, before I begin my presentation, I would draw members' attention to the updated, the addendum report, the additional document from the applicant team, and an additional condition in relation to sewer flooding. The application before members this evening relates to a single-storey residential building known as 1 St Catherine Mews, identified by the red arrow on the slide before you. This application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing single-storey unit and a replacement with a 2-storey with basement, 2-bedroom, 4-person dwelling. The application site itself is located within the Chelsea Conservation Area, and the image before members on the slide shows the relationship with the nearby Grade 2 listed buildings, which includes number 10 Milner Street, which is located just here with my arrow. Within the Conservation Area appraisal, number 1 St Catherine Mews and the other properties along the Mews are identified as neutral buildings within the Conservation Area appraisal document. As mentioned, number 10 Milner Street is Grade 2 listed, and this was built without a structure to the without a structure to the rear. However, the structure to the rear now, number 1 St Catherine Mews, was built. However, when number 10 was listed, this wasn't included within the listing for number 10 Milner Street. In terms of some site photographs, this is the existing front elevation, so members can note the existing single-storey building here and its relationship with the surrounding Mews buildings. Some further site photographs, so the image on the left shows the view of the rear of Halsey Street and from the garden of number 10 Milner Street. Again, the application site can be seen here on this central image from number 10 Milner Street. And then the last image on the right-hand side shows the relationship, shows the rear of number 10, which is Grade 2 listed. In relation to the proposed plans, these can be seen on the slide before you. As mentioned, it has been proposed to be 2-storey with a basement level, so members can note the basement level on this left-hand image, the proposed ground floor, and the proposed first floor plan. Members can note that the building at first floor will sit flush with number 2, however it will project in terms of its window projection in this area here. So just to draw members' attention to that projection there, but it will sit flush for part of it with number 2. The proposed elevations can be seen on this slide. So members can note the differing materials and the design of the replacement building. The recommendation before members this evening is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions. I would draw members' attention to the conditions which requires further details of the materials and also for a sample panel of the brickwork to be provided as well. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have speakers again for this case. So we've got a number. I don't know whether everyone is going to speak. Maybe you can just point out where you are. I've got Deborah Iliff, Gottsunda, Gandiaga, Mimi Patterson, Billy Palmer. Just looking around. Okay. Maybe just so we know who's going to speak. Maybe you can just identify who you are, and then you have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Deborah Iliff. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I own and have lived at 8 St. Catherine's Mews with my children for 13 years. I speak on behalf of the unanimous residents of the Mews who strongly object to this application. We believe this is the wrong development for this location and are shocked it's progressed this far. We live in unusually close, narrow quarters. This proposal doesn't consider the impact on residents, our safety, or the area's character. Clear planning reasons this application should be refused. 1, the existing building is curtilage listed. Its historic relationship with the Grade 2 listed 10 Milner Street demonstrates it receives the same protection as the principal building. No listed building consent application has been submitted. Members don't have sufficient information to properly assess the status of the building proposed for demolition. 2, the design and materials palette failed to preserve or enhance the conservation area or the listed asset. The proposal takes no reference from the surrounding architecture. We strongly disagree with the applicant's conclusion that it would have a positive impact on nearby heritage assets. How? This detailed application leaves design details to conditions? It's confusing. I am not allowed double glazing on my windows, but an ultra-modern design in the sharpest possible contrast to the Mews and wider area could be approved? 3, construction impacts are inadequately addressed. This muse has significantly restricted access. We all get in and out of our homes and offices through a narrow tunneled gate just over 8 feet wide, which I don't see mentioned or referred to. Even without significant construction materials, skips, and large equipment at the mouth of the gate, it's already a fire trap, yet there is no detailed construction logistics plan. Where will this equipment go, given there are only 13 feet from the end of the gate tunnel to this property? 13 feet. A statement submitted for the subterranean works gives no clear explanation of how construction access will be managed or disruption to residents will be minimized. There's a reason no one in the muse has basements. It's impossible to dig under such a small space. We rely on continuous access through a small tunnel to our garages, homes, and offices, or we are trapped. Where is the plan in case of fire? I invite the committee to visit the site before voting. You're leaving us in a fire trap. We cannot see any benefits, only clear harms to the Grade 2 listed building, the conservation area, and the amenity value of St. Catherine's Mews. We respectfully ask the committee to protect our safety, the area, as is their responsibility, and refuse this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We have Gary Kellett and Chris Brown, architect and agent. Over there. Thank you. You have also 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee, for the opportunity to speak in support of this application for a demolition of a single-storey, one-bed dwelling and replacement with a 2-storey plus basement, 2-bed home at 1 St Catherine's Mews. I'm Chris Brown from Rothschild Planning, speaking on behalf of the applicant. The site is a poor quality building and within a mews that is located within Chelsea Conservation Area. The mews contains no conservation area views, and the mews buildings are deemed by the council to make a neutral contribution to the conservation area. The site is also not within the curtilage of a listed building, but it does neighbour to, which will not be negatively affected by the works. The contemporary design of the building has been informed by 3 recent pre-applications with the local authority. The council's design and conservation officers determined that replicating the mews buildings would not be preferable, as it would create an uncomfortable pastiche of a neutral contributor to the conservation area. The proposed replacement dwelling would be subservient to the mews and comprises a recessed first floor level, positioned in line with the neighbouring property at number 2 St Catherine's Mews, whilst remaining a relatively low scale structure. The ground floor would be constructed from buff-coloured brick, with the upper floors wrapped in dark metal-clad louvered fins, which offer privacy for the occupants and other neighbours. The application has attracted some 17 objections from neighbours, along with 5 letters of support. A full response to each objection has been submitted to the council prior to their recommendation, and a summary of the officer's assessment of these comments is provided in section 6 of the committee report. The officer and their technical consultees all agree with the points raised in our rebuttal and have recommended to approve the scheme. The subordinate scale and high quality design of the development has ensured that all neighbouring homes are not significantly impacted by the new dwelling. Objectors have raised that 10 Milner Street has a window which fails daylight tests, and an amenity area that is overshadowed by the development. It should be noted that the owner of 10 Milner Street has sent a letter of support for the development, and the officer is content with the failing windows that serves a bathroom, which is not a habitable room, so this is acceptable. The amenity area is currently operating as an informal parking area for the neighbours, so there was some debate about whether to classify this as a amenity space. Regardless, we've done so, and the officer is content that there is no significant harm to overshadowing impact, given this dense urban locality. Other concerns have been raised about construction impacts of the development. This has been fully addressed within the structural reports and various construction management plans, and conditions have been added to ensure that the development is constructed in line with the council's requirements. To conclude, the scheme will have the following benefits. We'll construct a high-quality 2-bed, 4-person dwelling, which improves upon the quality of the existing unit. We will improve the appearance of the mews through the introduction of an attractive contemporary design, which will enhance the conservation area and will be a vast improvement on the existing very unattractive and structure which has no architectural interest at all. Given the reasoning above, we contend that the proposed development should be accepted in principle, and we ask the councillors vote to approve the scheme tonight. Thank you.
Thank you both speakers for keeping to time. There's a lot in this. Looking to questions to the objectors and the applicants. Councillor Dodd-Noble first.
Thank you. This is a question for the objector. Could you, obviously you talk very passionately about the entrance into the Mews. Could you just sort of walk us through a bit more around that, how busy it is, and people coming and going during the day?
There's a gate that opens onto the street, and you walk through a tunnel. It's 8 feet. There's nothing, I don't know how the machinery is even going to get inside. It's only so high, you can't get large trucks in there. And it comes out into a very small courtyard. There's no other way in and out. It's not a normal Mews. There's not 2 ends. It's just a little courtyard. It was originally a dairy. And this number 1, which is perfectly fine, it just looks like it needs a lick of paint. It looks lovely and it fits in with all the other houses. Number 1 is right, as I say, I measured it yesterday. It's 13 feet from the end of the tunnel. And there's no other space. Then there's other houses, and there's from one side of the Mews to the other, it's very small. You can only fit maybe 3 small cars in between. So I have no idea where you're going to put construction equipment, skips, and the materials, the building materials. How is it possible they're going to fit all this in, and we're going to live our lives, we're going to get in and out safely, and people drive in and out. We have the right to drive in and out and leave our cars there temporarily if we like. There's offices there, there's many people working there. They need to get to, it's completely impractical. The courtyard is brick laid. Again, this was a dairy. No one has basements. There are no basements. Why would you dig a basement under it's a small space. You have the footage. Why would you how can you possibly dig a basement? Sorry, thank you.
Further questions from members? Yes.
Sorry, can I just ask just a follow-up question to that, not to the objector, but to the applicant. Obviously, have you engaged with the residents? Has this been built into the plan around how you'll solve some of those issues that we've heard of tonight?
Yes, in short. So the actual Mews itself has had different forms of development. I don't think it's not had a basement development before, but it's had other forms in terms of there's been roof terraces, kind of extensions, etc., that have all taken place and been done within the Mews previously. These works are slightly larger, but we have conditions that are attached, which have which will secure all the permissions for construction logistics and actually how this will practically get built. If there's anything that was unacceptable to the council and to officers and to all of your kind of internal consultees and with their expertise that was unacceptable, then this development simply wouldn't be able to come forward. So that conditionality gives you that security that this can come forward safely.
Can I just pick up on this? Because normally we see a draft CTMP, Construction Traffic Management Plan, and the officers would normally have assessed that and seen that it was possible, viable, and then would need further details. I think, I'm just checking in the report, that it is directly against policy to not submit a CTMP. It is the case that certain things can be sorted out by condition, but this is quite a sensitive location in terms of a narrow and low entrance way, and it's not publicly accessible. There's been presumably time to have drawn up a CTMP. Is there a reason why, particularly in this occasion, there isn't a draft CTMP that's gone to officers, which is against policy?
Well, we have not been asked for one, but it's been attached as a condition, and it acts in much the same way. So if that still was to come forward and not be acceptable, then the whole scheme would not be able to come forward. So we view the condition as being suitable, but perhaps officers can confirm that as well.
Okay. Just a question to the objector, and I notice there are a large number of residents. The look of the Mews, even though it's quite modern in terms of age, is traditional form of Mews house in many ways. And how much is it a concern of the objectors that to reach your own homes you will have to go past something which is completely different from anything that you see in the approach to the road. I mean, we all know the roads around there. It doesn't seem to mirror anything in the area, but particularly in the Mews itself. If you're looking in the Mews,
exactly.
There's brickwork there, but particularly the metal fins. Is that something that triggered a lot of the objections?
Oh, originally we were sent copies by the architect, and we were shocked, we were stunned, we all couldn't believe it. This is going to be the biggest eyesore. Why would you? It looks like a parking garage, it's the most modern, hideous thing that is going to be. Every other building looks the same. Every other building on Milner Street and all the surrounding streets looks the same. Why on earth would you do something so different? Why can't it just look the same? Why can't you keep it looking the same? It just doesn't fit. It's going to be such an eyesore. Thank you.
No, thank. We could tell by the way you're speaking, and it's picked up in the letters as well. Right, just checking if there's anything else that I wanted to check with applicant or objector. Yeah, there is one thing, which is I'm reading in some of the objection letters and also in what you had just said, and we could also pick it up with officers, is I'm trying to work out, obviously the ground floor does project by a metre or metre and a half, just guessing by the pictures, from the building line of the other Mews houses. The first floor, in some images, and from what was being said, it is set back, it says, at the building line with number two. But in other images, it says, oh, the window is sticking out. I was wondering if you could just, we'll pick it up with officers, but just give a chance for you to explain whether it's in line or not in line with the rest of the Mews houses.
Yes, certainly, thank you for your question. The first floor volume is set back in line with the neighbouring property. It's the glazed projection, so the oriel window, that actually sets forward of that, but by a minimal distance.
And how much is the oriel window projecting?
It's around 300 to 400 mil in terms of its projection. So the ground floor itself doesn't project any further than the existing property. So we're adhering to that line. And as we step back, the mass at first floor is stepping further back. And it's the oriel window, which is a glazed projection, is stepping ever so slightly forward of the fins.
Okay, and in terms of the choice of materials, which is radically different from anything that's seen in the area or the Mews now, was that a particular design consideration of the applicant, or did it just emerge through sort of conversations and pre-apps and other things? Just trying to get to the origin of how it looks.
I think it's probably worth it's sort of hitting home that this has been designed with extensive engagement with both officers and conservation officers, and as a site, it's a particularly challenging site, and the whole premise of replication, the pastiche, it just isn't, in our opinion, the right thing to do. So in terms of materiality, what we've tried to do is we've got the DNA of a typical Mews. It's quite utilitarian, that the materials have a function. We've got brick on the ground floor. We've got a simple palette that is arranged in a slightly more contemporary manner. For us, this wasn't about replicating what's happening to the right in the existing Mewses, or indeed trying to impose an architecture on the listed building. Here, we feel that the architecture itself should be strong and confident to stand in its own merit rather than taking references from the surrounding context. And these were some of the points that were certainly, we spent a lot of time with the conservation officer, negating away designs and proposals that looked like they were trying to copy something else, and it was the confidence of what we were putting forward, and also acknowledging the true DNA of what a Mews house is. We've got the opening at ground floors, which is sort of symbolic of the workings of a traditional Mews, and the sort of the recessed first floor, which again there is normativity.
Understood. A passionate defence of strong and confident versus concern from residents about its place, and so that's something we'll have to work our way through. But thank you very much. Any more questions, or are we going to move to officers? Thank you. We'll move to officers. Okay, Lloyd, please, and then Mark.
So I am slightly conflicted, I have to say. I'm quite compelled by the objectors' comments about the heritage, and heritage is always top of my list. I'm quite surprised to see this come forward in its current form, and I'd like to know a bit more from officers and be reassured by officers that in their pre-app advice, this was the best that they could come up with. I'm not looking to reinvent what we've got in front of us, because personally I don't like it, but I'm surprised to see in a conservation area in such a sensitive Mews setting as this, is that this was what our officers pre-agreed with the application to a stage that it was being approved. I wonder if you can explain that to me.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just put the site photographs up while we discuss this point. So as mentioned this evening, there have been extensive rounds of pre-application advice, and that has included conversations and meetings with our conservation and design team. So as part of those pre-applications, consideration was given to the relationship with the Grade 2 listed building, and there was consideration given to whether listed building consent was needed for the boundary wall with number 10 Milner Street. In terms of the design has changed throughout pre-application discussions with officers. So one of the first applications which officers considered was an extension to number 2, almost made to design to look as a more traditional mansard. But as mentioned this evening, officers considered that going for something more contemporary, more modern, would create a new character, or would allow for the proposed building to sit proud within the Mews. As I mentioned as part of my opening presentation, the buildings themselves within St Catherine Mews have been identified as neutral buildings, so they blend into the townscape and blend into the conservation area. As part of the officer's report, there has been reference made to the new building, which would help to contribute to the conservation area. So officers have also considered its positive impact to the conservation area and its setting as well. So in summary, the design that's before members this evening and forms part of this application has been considered by officers, and it has been encouraged and supported as part of the most recent pre-application.
Thank you for that. My sniff test on this is always, in 5 years' time when I walk past this Mews, which I will be doing, am I going to look up at this and think, oh my God, it's a tin shed on top of a pile of bricks? That is my worry here. And I'm reassured that your officers are saying to me, yes, Councillor North, you can comfortably approve this, and if I drive past, then we'll be having conversations later.
Councillor Goldfinger.
Just for the officers, there's a bit of conflicting information about the tree protections and the root protection area. Are the officers comfortable granting this, considering the fact that they believe there's no impact on the trees in the actual area, but yet the residents have highlighted several times that the proposed circular of the root protection area falls directly within the construction zone? Is there anything that we can be assured of that this actually won't impact the nearby trees? Have the officers spoken about this or written about this?
Thank you, Councillor. So as part of this application, a consultation has been carried out with the Council's tree officers. They have reviewed the submitted material, and as mentioned in paragraph 6.27, there are no trees or street trees on the site, and there are no trees protected by a TPO. An arboricultural impact assessment was submitted, and as I mentioned, was reviewed by the tree officers. They are content with that in relation to the impact to nearby trees, whether those trees be located within a conservation area or have a TPO on them. There aren't any recommended conditions, as officers don't consider them necessary, and it is just that the proposal complies in relation to its impact on trees and that specific point within CD11 in relation to the basement.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ortiz.
Thank you, Chair. Following on with the trees, if I can just take you through the steps that I've gone through and then get you to comment on them. So if I go to 6.27 of your report, it says, as the proposed basement would be contained within the footprint of the existing building, it's unlikely to result in harm to the protected tree. The proposal therefore complies with criterion D of policy CD11. Now, when I went to policy CD11, the test that I came across was unlikely to cause harm, which to my mind is not quite the same thing as saying the test was whether there was a threat to trees, and unlikely to cause harm is not quite the same thing as a threat. And so I then looked in the portal for a sort of arboricultural observation document that we sometimes see. I've gone through the 9 tabs. I can't find one. Can you direct me to it?
Thank you. So in relation to the tree officer comments, they are on the application file. Apologise if they're not made public. They should have been. I've just got the comments up before me this evening, so just rereading them. So there was a large London plane tree to the north of the property, but permission was given to remove this in 2022, and a reference has been provided. The tree officer has referenced the tree officer report from February 2026, which does detail a London plane tree in the garden to the east. So in summary, the tree officer has reviewed that and has suggested that given the method statement and the tree protection plan are followed, which is within the report, then there would be no risk to that London plane tree within the garden to the east.
And then if I can just ask one further question about the construction traffic management plan. Am I correct in understanding, turning to recommendation 5, that if the committee was to adopt that course of action and to approve subject to a traffic management plan then being approved by the local planning authority, although it's good practice for the developer to liaise with residents, this formal setting of looking at a draft plan and then raising objections if they had any to that construction traffic plan wouldn't be there, and it would just be a case of the local planning authority making a determination.
Thank you, Councillor. So in relation to the CTMP, so a CTMP is usually required for all basement applications up front, and as set out in paragraph 6.30 of the officer's report, officers have considered that on balance, this application can be considered without a draft CTMP and a condition implemented. What I would say is that Highways have reviewed the application and they feel that a suitable CTMP could be worked up on site. It may be that members could consider, if you are comfortable with a CTMP condition, we could make a note that any CTMP would need to come back to a future committee. That could be something that you could consider. Or if members wanted to see a CTMP up front, it could be a reason that you defer an application this evening to have that and consider it in more detail. So as I say, it is usual for a CTMP to be provided or a draft CTMP to be provided, and I would say that that has been identified as a weakness in the scheme, but officers consider that in this instance, on balance, a condition could be used.
Thank you. And just thinking about those words that you said, it may be that if it proceeds in that direction, that a CTMP might find that spoil has to come out by hand or in some little trolleys and is removed from outside and have to go up the slope. But we're not going to design that here tonight. I wanted to return to the fundamental design of it, and it feels that this is the area of biggest difference between officers and the applicant who I'm just quoting some of the words that have been given about the design: strong and confident, a new character, sitting proud in the Mews, and ultra modern is something that the objector mentioned. I'm just wondering how, and this seems to sort of relate back to a fear of making something that looks like the rest of the Mews, even though the rest of the Mews is not that old, and technically it should be possible to build something, if that was in everyone's interests, that didn't sit proud and introduce a new character and wasn't strong and confident. So I'm just wondering how officers felt comfortable that this was the appropriate place for something that was strong and confident and sitting proud in the Mews, rather than something that that fitted in with the sort of overall environment that neighbours and residents have expressed tonight, that they feel comfortable in the environment that they've bought into and have lived in for a number of years, because they're the ones who are going to have to walk past it, every single time they walk past it to get to their own homes.
Thank you, Chairman. So in relation to the replacement building, officers do consider that it responds to its traditional setting, so the use of the brick and the stone at ground floor level, and the metal work does respond to some of the characteristics and materials within the Mews itself and the surrounding context. As I've mentioned earlier, officers consider that the design intent of the building and the rationale is justified, and we do support it in relation to its impact to the conservation area and the surrounding setting. If members, were uncomfortable with the design and felt that it actually harmed, then that would be for you to consider and discuss this evening in relation to those policy tests. As mentioned, we find that it overall preserves and in some instances would enhance in relation to the conservation area, but members may take a different view this evening.
Maybe I'll pick up, because it's been quite a subject of conversation. So this is us discussing, because we're trying to work out whether this is meeting the tests and how we're going to balance it. So Councillor North was looking at me first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's very useful. It is a difficult one, and I think for many of us it's an on-balance view on this. I do believe that the CTMP needs to be clarified before this was fully approved. Whether it is approved by officers, I'm confident that officers can approve that. It doesn't think it needs to come back to committee. However, my issue is, and I'm very compelled by, I've read in detail all the objections, and I'll just use the first one on my list, is that the building is not sensitive to the context of its surroundings, which whoever that objector was, I think has hit the nail on the head. And for me, I'm going to walk past it once in 5 years, but for all the residents that have written in tonight, they're going to pass it every single day. And I'm ever so sorry that this needs to be represented in a much more sympathetic way. I do accept that the CTMP can be got over, but we need to be convinced of that before work starts. That's the two separate issues, the CTMP and the heritage aspect, because this is a very quaint Mews, however old or not it is, that I don't think this complements the Mews setting or the conservation area. So on that basis, I'm minded not to approve.
Thank you. I think you put the argument very well. How do others feel? I was looking at Councillor Goldfinger next.
I agree with the CTMP aspect. I think essentially I'm racking my brain to understand how the basement will be built and excavated, if not by hand, especially considering we wouldn't be able to have diggers or large, large vehicles brought into the Mews, especially considering how that would manage the efflux and influx of people coming in and out of the Mews itself. I think that's my big issue. I am less concerned with the design, because I think the existing building isn't particularly attractive, and I think that the newer building could potentially give some new life to the actual Mews itself. I'm wary to say that things cannot change because we simply do not want it to change. I think it is correct that Councillor North should suggest that this should be in keeping with the culture of the Mews, but I actually don't find it. I find it quite tasteful. My worry here is the CTMP, and it hasn't been presented, and we can't give ourselves a fuller inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd-Noble.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor North. I would trust officers to approve the correct CTMP, given that it's a very small space, and I'm sure there are ways to get around that. That said, I also agree that the building doesn't necessarily fit within the Mews, and I think if I was to live there and I was to walk past it every day, I think, metal protruding on a second floor as I walked past it would be a bit of an eyesore. So, that's to take into account.
Thank you. Councillor Ortiz, and then we'll try and work out how we'll move forward with this case.
Thank you, Chair. When I consider the decisive issues points that are raised in the report at part 6.5, and particularly I Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, would it preserve or take opportunities to enhance the character appearance of the group of buildings in the wider area? Well, I think we've heard compelling testimony from a resident tonight and through other objections as well that view isn't shared in the street. Whether it would continue to ensure good living conditions for all neighbouring occupiers, well, I can't make that determination in a positive way without a construction traffic management plan, or at least a draft of one, because I don't know what impact that work will have on residents, and whether it would have an impact on highway safety and operations. Again, I can't answer that without that draft plan, but the most compelling issue, which I think Councillor North put very well, is that concern about the heritage. Where I differ with Councillor North is I would not be minded to allow officers to just determine the construction traffic management plan. I think there needs to be an input from residents, because although I have considerable respect for the work that officers do, I think that at the end of the day it's residents on the ground that have the lived experience of what works and what doesn't work in a mews. They're reversing in and out of it every day, parking there every day, and so I would want it to come back, but as it stands I'm minded to refuse.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So officers, what it looks like we're developing here, and I don't know whether officers have sort of constructed into something. There seems to be a sort of a tendency towards significant concerns over design and its impact on the conservation area. There are 17 neighbouring objections who have given their feeling, even though the applicant and some design officers have come up with a different scheme. So that seems to be something we do need to reflect on and see if we can move through a vote and then a recommendation for a different vote, which I'll just take councillors through in a second. And secondly, we seem to have everyone is concerned with the buildability because of the very unusual approach and the very tight circumstances, and I don't know how we would work that in, because there seem to be two reasons developing why people feel it's uncomfortable to move ahead with this. One is, can it be built, and is the condition going to be strong enough to allow residents to have the full impact, because normally we would see something like this, particularly this is one of the most restricted sites that I've seen, and particularly with, you're having to go in a tunnel effectively to get through to it. And then the second is the design. Fiona, do you have something that you've sort of put together from what we've been saying?
Yes,
I mean, first
definitely.
of all, I think we can take the vote on the recommendation, and then we'll look at.
That's exactly right. If you do the vote as you suggest, and then I'll help you out with the reasons.
But you're ready for us to
yeah.
do it, okay. So the officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour of granting? Right, there is no one in favour of granting. Do we now propose an alternative motion?
Yes, I would suggest, based on the conversations you've had this evening, thank you, you've actually given us a lot to go on. The first would be the proposed replacement building, by reason of its design and architectural character, they seem to be the key issues, fails to respond to the immediate site context, and then subsequently preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. And then we will bolster the exact wording and reference relevant policies. I do actually think there's a second reason for refusal there, in the applicant has failed to demonstrate with the submission of a draft CTMP that it can be done safely and without harm to amenity. And even those members that were satisfied, it could be dealt with, you can still support that as a reason for refusal when you come to vote.
So hearing those, which seem like a very good summary of our discussion, thank you. What we need to have is a motion to refuse, and we need using those as reasons. Councillor North is proposing, and can we have to see someone second? Councillor Ortiz will second. If I'm getting this the right way around, so it's already getting late in the evening. On this new recommendation to refuse, for the reasons that the officers have set out, can I see those in favour of refusing? And that is all 5 unanimous refused. Okay. Has that given you everything you need? Okay. All right. Thank you, officers. We are about to. We've got 2 more speaker cases. Are members happy to continue sitting, or do you need a break at this stage? Okay. Happy to continue sitting. And officers are okay to continue? Thank you. So item 5 is Lancaster Road and Ladbroke Grove. Thank you for your patience, everyone who's waiting for your cases to come up.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw attention to the addendum report as we have a few clarification points on this item. The site is actually in Ladbroke Grove Station Neighbourhood Centre, that's the correct reference. And I just need to clarify, condition 6 should actually say outside. It shouldn't say opposing, it shouldn't say opposite, it's to say outside. So this is an application for the change of use of the property at 134 to 134A Lancaster Road by connecting it to the existing public house at 139 Ladbroke Grove. So it's a change of use from Class E to sui generis pub. It also involves the installation of some awnings and erection of tables and chairs on the pavement outside the property. So what we have here is the aerial view and the site location plan. So you can see the existing public house at 139 Ladbroke Grove on the corner, and then our application site at 134 Lancaster Road next to it. As you can see from the street view image here, the application site 134 Lancaster Road has been vacant since roughly July 2024 according to street view images, and you can also see that the property has existing awnings that are being replaced, and you can see the photo on the left, there's also awnings of the property to the left as well. Policy in terms of the change of use, Policy TC3 is the main assessment policy which supports a diverse range of town centre uses that contribute to the character, function and viability of the town centre. And the proposal will also have an active frontage retained because there are no works done to the shop front. So officers consider that the proposed change of use is acceptable. Just turning to the works. We have the existing and proposed basement plan here. And the only physical works in the basement, it's very hard to see. There's just a small wall being demolished just to the north of the basement to connect the 2 properties. And then the proposal is for the pub kitchen to be in the basement of 134 Lancaster Road. The actual physical works themselves here, because they're internal and the building isn't listed, they don't require planning permission, but they're required in association with the change of use. And then we have the proposed ground floor. Similarly, the only physical works here are the demolition of part of the wall to interconnect the 2 properties. It's also to point out that there are no physical works in terms of extraction from the kitchen. The application proposes to use the existing extract flue that is at the rear of the property associated with the public house. So what we have here, proposed elevations. So any future signage in the yellow zones could require advertisement consent, and they don't form part of this application. And this shows also in pink on the public house facade that we've granted awnings to the public house in 2024. And as I said before, there are existing awnings at the property as well. And then in terms of the pavement dining area, the image on the right-hand side of this screen shows the location of the proposed tables and chairs and the fact that there's quite a wide pavement remaining outside, hence why this part of the application is recommended for approval. And you'll also note that there are conditions 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, I believe, restricting the number of tables and chairs, the location of the tables and chairs, no associated paraphernalia, and reducing litter and nothing to be near the tree that's on the pavement. And also to note that tables and chairs have been approved in 2019 and 2020 to the adjacent public house, similar location and similar conditions, and you can see these in the image to the left here. So overall, the proposed change of use, the external awnings and the tables and chairs are considered to be acceptable and recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thanks.
Thank you. We have an objector of Mr. Cavendish. I assume that's you looking at the people.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, so you have 3 minutes.
The owners of the Knight of Notting Hill, who are making this application for the adjacent premises, are already creating unacceptable and harmful levels of noise pollution for local residents. Extremely loud music is played through huge speakers up to and very often beyond what is already extremely late times at weekends and during the week, up to 2 a.m. during the weekend. I have lain awake in my bedroom, double glazed to try unsuccessfully to repel the noise, and I can clearly hear the song lyrics. Outside tables and crowds of patrons are regularly not policed or controlled by the pub management. I have often been in touch with the pub owners. Things get better for a couple of days before resuming as before. My neighbour, who cannot be here today, Mr. Ramsey, because he's away on business, vehemently shares my objection. I understand his tenant, who has 2 young children, unable to sleep sufficiently for school, has been so distressed that she has handed in her notice. My daughter Willow, who lives with me, has had to move out, unable to get sufficient rest and recuperation to do her job as a psychotherapist. The levels of noise pollution have got much worse over the last 6 months, aggravated by the inability and apparent disinterest of the pub management to control or police their responsibilities. Unfortunately, for most of this time, I have been receiving cancer treatment in Southampton and have been unable to report these breaches to the council. This current application under review shows clearly the unacceptable impact on neighbouring residential amenity. The noise policy statement has not been addressed at all within submitted documentation. Policy GB8 of the local plan, no unacceptable noise and vibration impacts on neighbouring occupiers, and Para 479 identifying outside seating for pubs and restaurants creating additional noise, are not dealt with. No credible mitigation has been proposed for new noise generating uses on residential properties as per Para 200 of the NPPF. The submitted design and access statement totally fails to engage with these issues. There is no assessment of noise impact whatsoever in the document. The site and surrounding appraisal, section 2, does not acknowledge the existence of neighbouring properties at all. The PPR, section 4, omits any consideration of amenity impacts. HC7 is mentioned, but no assessment of negative impacts is undertaken. The proposal accords not at all with the local plan, the London plan, or the NPPF. The proposed development would increase scale and activity further beyond the legal baseline. Greater internal floor space and enlargement of external seating areas would lead to greatly increased noise levels and disturbance. Increased delivery and servicing will be very impactful. Refuse, storage and waste collection, already chaotically disorganized and pollutive to health, will be even worse. The application shows insufficient technical evidence that these impacts, many of them very late into the evening, can be mitigated. There is no noise impact assessment. There is no scheme of acoustic mitigation. There is no operational management plan dealing with the areas such as patron dispersal, external seating, hours of music and other use. This proposal utterly fails to demonstrate that this site can accommodate this level of activity without causing huge harm and mental health damage to local residents. So, this application should be refused, or, at the very least, deferred, pending delivery of the information not provided in the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Very clearly presented and rationale listed. Right, questions. I notice we don't have the agent or applicant to answer any of their points. So we just have to, you'll be the sole source of information for us, apart from the officer's report. So we have Councillor Dodd-Noble and then Councillor Lloyd-North.
Thank you, Mr. Cavendish. If you wouldn't mind, could you let me know where you live, unless you mentioned it, which in case I missed, if you're happy to, and just a few more sort of examples around the noise, because obviously that sounds like it's a very serious issue. And have you spoken with other residents in the area, and what do they say?
Yes, so my address is 1B Railway Mews, but the front of my flat, which is on the second floor, is above the proposed area where the new restaurant is suggested that it would be. Mr. Ramsey is the flat below me. The current levels of noise are simply unbelievable. What has actually happened is that the KPH pub used to be, back in the old days, a magnificent venue for classic music. People like Tom Jones and The Clash played there. The current holders of the license for the pub managed to get that license, which is 1:30 at night during the weekdays and 2 a.m. During the weekend, presumably under the impression given that they would be providing quality music acts. In fact, all they have is a huge speaker system and DJs playing rather bad current music, and I like current music. It is wholly unacceptable. It is impossible to live in the residences. It's impossible to sleep. As I say, I have double glazed my our house at my own expense, and I can still not sleep. And as I say, I can hear the lyrics of the songs that are played from the pub. The idea that this will be spread further, actually underneath us, by people who have no interest in or ability to police their own outside tables or noise or anything else, it would be beyond belief, quite frankly.
Thank you. Who was next? Councillor North.
Yes, I would certainly agree with you that this establishment is a very different one to what was there before. I was very familiar with the one was before. The one thing I don't see in here, and I wondered if you had approached them, is the Ladbroke Association, because this is something that normally they would opine on. Don't see anything in the pack from here. Have you approached them, or do you have anything from them on this case?
We haven't approached them. I wasn't aware of them, but that's a very valuable thing that we would do. The Ladbroke Association, yeah.
Thank you. Right, I think we'll probably move on to discuss this with officers, but your point's very clearly made. Thank you. If you just pop your microphone off, because it means that we can hear ourselves more clearly up here. Right. So just this is a sort of difficult one for me to get my head around in the first place, which is there's already a problem, and so what can we do with this application? What's the starting point for officers? There's also obviously a licensing point, an environmental health point. What are the controls in operating in all the different ways that Mr. Cavendish has pointed out that are already having an impact, and how can we think that this wouldn't increase the harm of the impact by increasing the size of the venue?
Oops, thank you. I understand that the licence for the public house is 10 a.m. till midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Friday to Saturday. So that's covered under the licensing regulations. The public house itself, because it's its historic nature, won't have any planning conditions with regard to refuse, hours of operation, or anything like that. It will have to have the licence, as I've mentioned, and I have got comments from the noise officer who has confirmed that it has been served with a noise abatement notice. But the noise officer advises us that it's not relevant to this application because it's being dealt with under the licensing legislation. What we can do in terms of planning, we have the conditions about hours of operation of the tables and chairs. Because this unit is an extension of the public house and it's a new planning permission, we could actually add on hours of operation for this part of the building. We could add operational management plan needs to be submitted, sound installation needs to be submitted. We've already added on a waste management plan needs to be submitted. The only difficulty is enforcement management, because we're effectively splitting the unit up, so half of it has got planning conditions and the other half won't have. But this is a new planning application, so we could do that.
So this is quite interesting. So we can, if members are so minded, work with officers now and officers take away to draft them properly, much necessary strong controls on servicing and operation and hours and noise impact and noise insulation and all the other things that have been mentioned that could, because of how this application covers an existing unit and the extended unit, which becomes one application site, those new controls that we could ask for would cover both parts of this application site or not? That's what I'm trying to...
No, I think they would just cover the new part, the shop unit, the 134 and 134A Lancaster Road. They wouldn't cover the existing public house.
Right, so
Yeah.
however strict we could make the new application site, all the things that are causing a problem currently, it doesn't look like we can add controls over those. Is that right? Even though this application is the application site area is both buildings.
This one is tricky because there is a problem at the moment with the existing operator, and we can say that openly in this public meeting because there's been a noise abatement notice served. What you're considering this evening is the principle of that property, that vacant unit next door, being used as a pub. So that's what you need to think about. You need to not think about the operator and so on. It's the change of use. Is that acceptable? And it may well be that you give weight to the existing site arrangement and the fact that it's not been successful in being compatible with other uses in the area. That could be your planning judgment in respect of that. What you can't do is try and fix the problem that they have at the moment through planning, which would be a great thing to do, because I think everyone would want to resolve it, but the two legislations don't come together, and the actual joining of the properties in itself, I'm not sure that even requires planning permission. The demolition of the wall doesn't, and the amalgamation doesn't.
And just to ask this, Mr. Cavendish presented an alternative, which is a deferral, which we don't normally like to do, but because there is a live noise abatement issue on the first property, is there any by deferring this, can we wait for the solution to the noise abatement issues to help inform how this application could proceed? I don't know how members would think about it, but I'm just trying to explore, as we have the opportunity right now. It seems to be the grounds are moving. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it because there's just no defined length of time. So this application could be with us for the foreseeable. They have a right of appeal against non-determination from us from a planning point of view. It could be that you consider it intensifies the use of the property, and that plays into your concerns about the change of use. That would, I think, be sort of a better route forward if you're unconvinced on it.
Questions from other members? Councillor Ortiz, Councillor North, everyone.
Just coming back to that point about the live noise abatement issue at the other property, are we allowed to consider that in our deliberations as a cumulative impact for this application? Because this application will obviously involve more noise on top of the noise that there already is. So can we look at it as a cumulative impact when we're considering what to do?
I think you can say it's a material consideration in the assessment. I think it's within your reasonable for you to do that, and whatever weight you apply to it is for you as the decision maker. Yeah.
And of course, we don't have the publican here to respond as well, so we'll have to go on the evidence that we have, and we've got plenty of it. Thank you.
Councillor North.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. The applicant is not here tonight to answer key questions, and this is a substantial development of this business, and there are questions I think we legitimately need to ask about the running of it. Certainly the management, certainly the noise, the waste is already dealt with. We are a business encouraging council, and so I wouldn't want to refuse this because this looks on the face of it to be an improvement on its current operation. I won't say the word they're trying to bring it more up market, but I'm just saying that it could improve things, and I wouldn't want to just refuse it out of hand. I don't know how we bring it back in some form, or if there's certain clarification that could be sought. I know the officers probably won't be keen on a deferral, but is there any tightening restrictions we can add on? I realise there's a difference between the licensing, which is probably the major part of this, and what we're looking at is the planning aspect. So, sorry, how can we circle that square?
Through you, Chairman, I think the best way of doing that is probably to actually refuse it on the failure to demonstrate point. So you're not ruling that it's unacceptable in principle, but what they've done is failed to demonstrate to you and give you confidence that the change of use in intensifying the use of the public house on site would not harm the living conditions of neighbours. I think that's the way to do it, because it does leave the door open that that vacant unit can come forward, but they might need an operational management plan to convince you of that. They might need, well, to have a better operation strategy as existing. So that would probably be the best way. I really worry about a deferral because it's giving something specific and a timeline, and it just sets us up for a potential
I
appeal.
understand that, and actually I'm reassured by what you say, because I don't want to refuse it, and I don't want the applicant to think that we're refusing it out of hand. What we would like to see is more convincing evidence to reassure the local residents, because it has been a concern for some time. I'm definitely aware of that, and you can't really present an application of this complex, of this magnitude, without turning up to explain it to us. So I would like, I think I'm minded to refuse it and to ask it to be represented with proper evidence and a representation.
Yes, Councillor Goldfinger.
Thanks, Chair. This is for the officers. Without the operational management plan, were the officers content with accepting the proposals? And what were the main aspects that they felt that without such a key aspect of change, they were happy for this to go ahead? Was it based just on the reuse of the space, or what was the main drive here to approve this?
Sorry, just jumping ahead of Amanda Peck. I think we've given significant weight to the environmental health representations received, significant weight to the fact that there is a vacant planning unit there at the moment, and the vitality and viability piece. But that, I mean, it's your planning judgment to come to that conclusion.
Thank you.
Right. Has anyone not had a say, because we've got to work out what to do? Councillor Dodno.
Minded to agree with Councillor North. It doesn't seem there's enough information here that the expanding of the restaurant and turning what looks like the bar area into a nightclub, really sort of backs up that. Thank you.
So I think just reflecting on the things you've probably been noting them down, there seems to be a failure to demonstrate that that the intensification of use due to the increased size will further harm local amenity, resident living conditions, and without provision of detailed explanations about how all of the harms that we've heard are going to be managed and controlled. And that given that there is already a problem with controlling them, it feels like that's where we're getting to in terms of recommendation. So, have you got what you need to from us? So first of all, we do this bit, which is we say, for this application, can I see those in favour of granting? No one has shown their hands. So now we say there is a motion to refuse. Who would like to propose? So proposal is Councillor North, and second is Councillor Goldfinger. Is that recommendation? So that there's no recommendation. So now we're going to take a vote on for those reasons.
With the failure to demonstrate reason for refusal, and we'll finalise the wording based on what you've said. Yeah,
okay, that's right. Right. So for the motion to refuse based on the reasons that we've discussed and as noted by officers, can I see those in favour of refusal? That is unanimously refused. Thank you. So we have one more speaker case, and that is 39 Brompton Square.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I begin my presentation this evening, again, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report and the additional representation received. The application before members this evening seeks listed building consent for works to 39 Brompton Square, which is a Grade 2 listed building within the Brompton Conservation Area. The reason this application is before members this evening, as it has been called in by Councillor Idris. An aerial view can be seen on this slide, and some site photographs can be seen before members. The application itself seeks provision for a lift shaft and associated internal alterations. Officers have considered the proposed works, including the loss of historic fabric, and officers are recommending that listed building consent is refused, and the following reason has been set out within the officer's report. To talk you through the proposal in more details, the site photographs show the lower ground floor. So this is a location for the proposed lifts, which will include the removal of the existing WC. On the central image is the ground floor, and in the red box roughly shows you the location of the proposed lift. And at first floor level, this is where the lift shaft would also be located within the rear room, which is an existing bathroom. Some further site photographs here, which take you through the second floor and the third floor level. Again, you can see the location of the lift within the red box here. In terms of the existing and the proposed plans, so this image is helpful. So it shows the existing on the left-hand side and the proposed on the right-hand side, with the location of the lift in this area here, again, just with my cursor. In terms of the sections, so the existing section on the left-hand image and the proposed section on the right, it's quite hard to see on the TV or the screen, before us this evening, but the lift is in this area of the building, just here, again, with my cursor. In terms of the demolition, and this has been referenced as part of the officer's report, in terms of the loss of the historic fabric and the impact to the plan form, members can note the demolition in the red marking denoting on the plans, again, just with my cursor in these areas here. And on the right-hand image is the proposed plan, so the proposed lift at first and second floor level. Again, just taking you through the building at third and fourth floor. So we've got the proposed demolition, again identified by the red markings on the plans, and the proposed on the right-hand image, which shows the lift in this area here and here. I would note that as part of the proposal, there are some enhancements or some reinstatements of historic features. So as set out within paragraph 4.3, there is a reinstatement of a fireplace in the front first floor room, and there are some replacement of the windows as well. Those have been identified as part of the officer's report. As set out within the officer's report, officers have found that the proposal would fail to preserve the architectural and historic interest and significance of the Grade 2 listed building, and therefore it is the officer's recommendation that listed building consent should be refused for the following reason set out within the report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the agent or applicant representative to speak. This is a recommendation for refusal, so we only hear from the agent or applicant. Who's going to be speaking tonight? So you're to say which one you are, who you are,
yes,
so we know.
I'm the heritage consultant.
Right, so Cordula, okay.
That's it.
Yes, please go ahead.
Members of the Planning Committee, officers, good evening. My name is Cordula Zeitler. I'm a heritage consultant and director at Donald Insel Associates. The proposal in front of you is for a new passenger platform lift. This would provide essential access for the occupant, Faber Dewar, who is disabled, to all parts of his home so he can continue to participate in family life. We also propose a series of heritage improvements. Is the sound okay? You can hear me. The benefits of our proposal outweigh the very limited harm. Faber is registered disabled. He is prone to falls, which can be life-threatening. He cannot negotiate steep stairs. Without a lift, he is unable to fully access his own home, which has a steep, narrow, and curving staircase. On the upper floors are his work studio, his son's bedroom, and his own bedroom. Reception spaces are on the lower floors. These spaces are not safe for Faber to access without a lift. The design team, our design team, have reviewed all possible options for a lift. An external lift on the rear elevation would have unacceptable heritage impacts. A stair lift is not feasible. The stairs are too narrow and curved. The transfer between separate stair lifts at each landing would be dangerous. A lift in the closet wing would isolate Faber from family life because he could not access the main living areas and bedrooms. Officers have suggested that we should demonstrate how Faber can live in his home in other ways. Faber's occupational therapist considers it essential that Faber can use all parts of his own home. Restricting him to only some areas is undignified. The proposal is for a lift in the rear room of the house, which has limited heritage significance. The lift design has the smallest possible impact. There would be no lift overrun and no impact on historic foundations. Floor joists would be cut out only when needed and retained in the building. Officers consider access a purely private benefit. We do not agree. Access requirements are a public issue, and disabilities can affect us all. It is troubling that officers want to refuse this application and protect elements of limited heritage significance in preference to addressing disability rights. This is the wrong balance. As you know, this application has attracted no objections. The proposals also include heritage benefits. These are the reinstatement of 4 chimney pieces rather than 1, as was reported, the removal of inappropriate sash horns, the removal of a security grille from the facade, and the restoration of a historic fan light over the front door. Officers agree that these are heritage benefits. In conclusion, the reasons for refusals are not sound. The application is based on need and the thorough study of alternatives. It substantially preserves the special interest of the listed building, and the minor heritage impacts are outweighed by the heritage and public benefits. This application satisfies your local plan requirements, the London Plan, the heritage policies in the NPPF, and the 1990 Planning Act, and should be granted planning permission and listed building consent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for waiting for this part of the evening. Questions from councillors? Yeah, so Councillor North and then Councillor Gorfinger.
Thank you. First of all, I should say I'm very grateful to the ward councillors and Councillor Idris in particular, the Brompton-Hanstown councillors, for calling this in. This is a good case that they called in, and they did a wise choice there. So I appreciate the advantages with the chimney piece and the door fan, right? I did notice that and pick up, and I see you mentioned that as well. You covered that. If there was a way, and I'll explore this with officers, that the joists can be retained, you say they're going to be retained in the building, so they can be reinstated at some point in the future when the lift is on, that at least would mitigate the harm that the officers rightly pick up on with listed building status such as this. Is that what you've already said, and would that be acceptable?
I can take that. That's absolutely part of the proposals already. So the proposal is to cut out just the bits of joists that would need to be removed, 3 per floor, but not the whole length, and they would then be bolted onto neighbouring joists, so they remain in the building on the same floor within the floor structure. So it's very clear where they came from, and they could easily be put back.
I was interested. Well, thank you for bringing this to council. I was interested to learn more about the other ways that you were exploring, other than using a lift, the chair lifts or other aspects. Could you just walk us through some of the other issues that you've looked through, and just to confirm to us that without having a mobile kind of device within the house, how that would affect Faber and what that would mean for the family going forward?
Yes, so we we were very keen to find the proposal which worked for Faber, obviously, but also which had the least heritage impact. So there are not that many areas where you could put in a lift. So we were keen to create access to all floors. So the front room we excluded, we didn't even investigate because that's the most important area of the listed building and you can see it from the street. At the back, attached to the rear elevation would have been another location, but again, that would have been very visible. Every rear window would have had to be converted into a door. So again, we avoided that. There was a conversation about putting it into the closet wing, and we did explore that, but that closet wing at the back doesn't go the full height of the building, and also the floors in the closet wing are at half landing level, so they do not communicate with the main house. So if you put a lift in there, you cannot actually access the main rooms. There was then a conversation about whether Faber could restrict himself to just lower floors, which are accessible to him from the street. And that just really isn't feasible because he works upstairs. His teenage son has a bedroom upstairs, so it would exclude him from really important spaces which he needs to have access to. So this is how we arrived at the solution we've proposed to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I just ask for this? This is not a case where a developer is seeking to make lots of changes to a listed building for a value. This is an existing long-term, from what I understand, an existing long-term family home that's been lived in as a family home, and then something terrible happened, and the family is trying to continue to live in their long-term home. Is that, if I got the timeline right?
Yes, that's correct. So Faber and his family have lived there for, I think, two decades.
I think so, yes.
Yes. And they've looked after the building. You've seen the photographs. They've kept it in beautiful repair. So this is a necessary alteration. It's not a speculative development.
Any other questions? Councillor Todd Noble.
Thank you. Just to confirm, I can't really see it, but is it about a metre square, the space of the lift? Is that correct?
Hi, my name is Johanna. I'm the architect. Apologies. We've actually done a small calculation. It's 1 metre 35 in length, and the depth of it is, excuse me, it's 95, so it's under a metre. And I think what's really important to say, and I was the one who had sent an email, I had said it was about 2.5%. It's actually less. It's 1.7%. And as Cordula had reinforced, the joists, we're splicing them, and then they're bolted to the side, and then we just have a trim. There's also one other thing I'd like to mention, by the planning officer, it's not a traditional lift shaft. This is a platform lift. It's completely self-supporting. We do not need a lift pit. We have 60 mil of concrete. We're not undermining the existing corbelled foundation. In fact, we're set back from them. The corbelled foundations are below the 60 mil of the concrete slab that we have. What will then happen is the self-supporting steel structure is brought to site. On each floor it's assembled and then it just clips on. And there's absolutely no damage to the listed building whatsoever.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, or we move to discuss with officers? Okay, thank you. All right, questions to officers from councillors. Councillor North.
Yes, thank you. Just taking up on that point, I've already noted the additions that would improve with the fire chimney piece and the door over. With regard to the proposal within this to save the original joists, does that mitigate the harm that you've perceived on this one? And would that, I know you're saying that's not going far enough. Is there anything else that we could do that could go further to mitigate that harm that you've reported?
Thank you, Councillor. So, in relation to the harm identified, there is an assessment made, obviously, is set out within paragraph 6.2 onwards of the officer's report. So the harm also occurs from the alteration to the plan form, which then has an impact in terms of the significance of the listed building and the impact to the rear of those rooms and the rear of the property. In terms of being able to reuse or keep some of that historic fabric, officers have considered that the harm, when weighed against the benefits, it isn't outweighed. Members may take a different view this evening and consider that the retention of that fabric within the building, in combination with the heritage benefits as set out within the officer's report and mentioned this evening, may lead to a position where any limited harm is outweighed. That obviously isn't the assessment that officers have set out, but members may conclude a different balance in relation to the heritage balance.
Thank you. Councillor Goldfinger.
Thanks, Chair. And given the fact that the building is split into two, as the architect was saying, that you have the front of the house and the back of the house, and that this lift shaft is being set in the back of the house, does that provide any confidence to the officers? Does it mitigate any of the issue that we're seeing that is not actually in the front of the house itself?
I think there's still a concern in relation to the addition of the lift at the rear of the property because the whole building is listed. I know that there were some pre-application discussions prior to the application being submitted where alternative schemes were discussed. As set out within paragraph 6.12, the officer or we have considered that there are potentially some adaptations that could be had to less sensitive and significant parts of the building and set out there in relation to the rear extension and the reorganisation of that space. But the applicant team has also set out that they have considered that as part of their design and access statement, and for certain reasons that's also not feasible. But as I say, officers have considered that there may be less sensitive parts of the buildings where adaptations could be made.
Thank you.
Got there in the end. Thank you. Officers, thank you. Is it possible to put something in this permission that grants them use of this lift, whilst they continue to own the property, and then maybe when they come to sell it, it's reverted back to its traditional use?
Thank you, Councillor. So we could consider a personal permission or a condition which restricts it to be personal for the occupier or the current occupier. The only thing in relation to a condition of that nature is the enforceability of it, and if the use was no longer and the current occupiers were to move out, it's how we would then look to have that historic fabric put back in or put back in place. I'm not too sure exactly in terms of the enforceability of the condition, but it is something that members could consider if they think that is necessary and meets the tests.
Thank you. I mean, maybe we could have a quick chat on that point. I mean, as I've thought through this, it's people who have worked very hard to make the house as invest in the house and make it as good as possible. It just seems unlikely to me that when there is no longer a need for it, that the owner of the house wouldn't reverse it as well. There've been, from what I've seen, there's been sort of continual periods of investment and improvement in the house, and this is I look at it as a temporary feature where there is not a single wall that's being removed. That it's the best position that it can be to serve the function, and I think it's a sort of self benefit to remove it when it's no longer needed, because it is temporary, but it's not an enhancement for anyone looking at the building, but it is enhancement for the family that's in there. So it feels personal, even though we don't then have to construct a large kind of difficult condition that officers would be concerned about for its potential removal. I think it would sort itself out, is the way I'm looking at it. Councillor Ortiz has been wanted to say something here.
I just had a question for officers, which is that in coming to a balancing exercise against the council's statutory duty to preserving the building and the features of special interest, and I'm thinking particularly of paragraph 6.13 of your report. But balancing that against the need, and you have considered it in the report, for equality and for him to be able to access the property like anyone else would be able to access the property. Do you accept that that was a very fine balancing act? And it's one where we ultimately need to come to a decision about those competing interests.
Thank you, Councillor. You are correct. This is a very sensitive application, and officers have considered it, and it has been well thought through in terms of that balance. And officers considered that when weighing up the potentially public benefits, private benefits, and also considering the heritage benefits, that we didn't feel that the balance tilted in favour, and therefore that's why we're recommending refusal. However, members may take a different judgment in terms of the balancing exercise, and you may feel actually the harm is potentially less or lower, and that you give more weight to the benefits in terms of the accessibility point, and maybe give more weight to it being a public benefit compared to what officers have. So it was finely balanced in respect of that.
Thank you.
If I can just ask one follow-up question. I have in front of me the Knightsbridge Association's planning application public comment document, which is on the portal. And they are broadly supportive, and they applaud the applicant's efforts to try and minimise the intervention, but they do ask that the local planning authority ensure that all work is carried out to the highest standards of care and craftsmanship. I think in fairness to the applicant, they have demonstrated in this application process how seriously they take it. But my question to officers is, are there any conditions that you can think of that might allay that point about all works being carried out to the highest standard of care and craftsmanship?
Thank you, Councillor. So if members are minded to grant listed building consent this evening, there will be a sweep of conditions that would be required. One of those conditions could be for more details to be submitted to the local planning authority in relation to the enhancements or the heritage benefits. So in relation to the chimney pieces, the fireplaces, details of new service runs, etc. There may also be the need for some conditions that touch on the comments mentioned in relation to the works being carried out to a high standard. And we have standard conditions to ensure that any works match existing or retained fabric. And we do also have standard conditions in relation to partitions, so any new partitions shall be lightweight and easily removable. What I would recommend to members is that if you are minded to grant listed building consent this evening, that you delegate conditions back to officers if you're comfortable to, and we will impose the conditions that we think are necessary and needed and meet the tests.
Thank you. I think I see some. I see sort of round series of that we're getting to a position where what you have just said are acceptable, and the thing we'll obviously take the vote on it. But I would just mention that there has been quite an extended period of negotiation already, and I think it would be the feeling of members that those conditions are sort of set out and discharged expeditiously, because it's been quite a long time in coming about. Right. So the recommendation, we're getting used to this now if people are ready. The recommendation is to refuse. Can I see those members who support the recommendation to refuse this application? There are no votes for refusal. We're getting quite used to this now. We need to have a motion to approve this for the reasons set out. So I've got Councillor Dodd-Noble and to propose and Councillor Goldfinger to second. So on that basis, and for the reasons set out, but with the conditions that officers will take away, but that they should be standard and speedy rather than getting in the way of things. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation to approve that we have just seconded, that we've just approved and seconded? Right. So those in favour of the new recommendation. Can we see? Yeah. All five. All right. So that, just so you know what's going on there, so your application is granted, and there are going to be conditions with officers, but they should proceed
Thank you, councillors.
expeditiously. Yeah. All right. We have a few more cases to go, 12, 11. Does anyone want a quick break, or do you want to whip through the rest of them? There are no speakers for the rest of them. Yes, 2-minute break for everyone. Thank you. So we are just, what's the term you want to use? This is a comfort break. Thank you. is everyone ready to resume? We are going to go to North Pack, which is Hazelwood Tower. What we're going to do, we're going to run through finish through the North Pack, and then we'll run through in order of the remaining cases in the South Pack. And this may go quite speedily, because we've all read the books. Right. Yes, Hazelwood Tower, please. This is RBKC's own application.
Thank you. So this is an application by RBKC. There's no objections to the application. It's a proposal for a replacement of existing timber windows and replacement with double-glazed aluminium windows to the ground floor of Hazelwood Tower. The site's in a residential area, not in a conservation area, not close to any listed buildings, and the application is recommended for approval with conditions. And there's just one clarification point in the addendum report regarding the spelling of Hazelwood Tower and Goulburn Gardens. The application is recommended for approval with conditions. No further comments to add.
Thank you. Officer recommendation is to grant. Are there any questions? Okay, please we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is granted. Next is Edenham Way.
Lovely. Similar to the previous application, this is a RBKC one as well. It's just a listed building application. No planning permission is needed for the works. It's a Grade 2 listed building on 2 blocks on Edenham Way. Proposal is for upgrading and replacement of electrical distribution infrastructure. So there are some trunking and associated works internally and externally. The application has considered whether it would preserve or enhance the special architectural and historic interest of the Grade 2 listed building, and whilst there is less than substantial harm, this is outweighed by public benefit. The application is recommended for approval with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you again. A very comprehensive report by Arup in here. I think everyone is indicating that they're ready to take a vote. Can I see those in favour of granting listed building consent? Please show. That is granted by everyone. Next case, 31 Queensdale Road, please.
Lovely. This is a proposal for a single-storey basement extension beneath the footprint of the existing building. There is just one clarification in the supplement in the addendum report. The application site is within the listed building and it's within a conservation area and a critical drainage area. The application is recommended for approval because it complies with our basement policies, subject to conditions regarding construction management and standard basement conditions, and no further comments to add.
Thank you. I just noticing that this is actually it's modest, it's policy compliant, and it's not. And it's under ground floor, not even under a lower ground floor, which we see a lot of basement applications going one level down. So this is a standard and fully compliant application. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Ortiz.
I just had a discrete point that I wanted to raise, which is that the files for the flood risk assessment were corrupted, as I understand it, and a reconsultation exercise was carried out. Were objectors given an opportunity to look at those uncorrupted files and then file any objections they had based on that? Because I saw that was a concern amongst objectors.
Yes, there was an ongoing issue with the accessibility of the documents, and yep, all of the objectors were notified and had the opportunity, and I believe there were further comments, but yes, yeah.
Councillor Dodd-Noble.
I actually had one other question, which was, are there other basements on the street? Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't know that off the top of my head. So I can't answer that, but it's quite likely given the length of the street.
All right. Any further questions, or are happy to move to decision? Okay, officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? That's everyone has voted to grant that, so you can see it. Okay, and now moving to, thank you very much, Amanda, moving to the remaining cases in the South Pack, starting with 11 Old Manor Yard.
Thank you, Chairman. I would draw members' attention to the addendum report and the correction just to paragraph 1.1 in relation to a spelling. The application before members this evening relates to 11 Old Manor Yard. The proposal is for the construction of a single-storey basement. There have been 2 objections received, but the reason it's coming to committee this evening is at request of Councillor Linda Wade. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission for the basement, subject to the recommended conditions set out. The conditions include a CTMP, land contamination, and also conditions in relation to SUDS. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ortiz.
Officers, thank you. My concern about this application is that it falls at a very delicate site in Earls Court Ward. And my primary concern is that I see a lot of conditions where we don't have the report for various things or a final picture, but we're being asked to approve it, and that will come at a later stage and be approved by the local authority, but that would remove the opportunity for objectors to have this formal process of having considered those reports, and obviously they live there. And so that's a side effect that I'm very troubled by, and I just wondered what your response was to that.
Thank you, Councillor. So in relation to some additional reports, so it may be that for a basement, a draft CTMP is provided and then a final CTMP is submitted to us by way of a condition. As part of a CTMP, there is a requirement that all residents, neighbouring properties are consulted, and the CTMP is drafted, informed by those consultations and those discussions with residents. As part of this application, the Highways Officer has reviewed the draft CTMP and finds it to be acceptable. However, they have suggested that adjacent commercial properties should also be notified and consulted on as part of the CTMP and the final CTMP. So it will be that residents should see an updated CTMP before it's submitted to the local planning authority for consideration. And a draft CTMP has been provided as part of this application, unlike the earlier application we discussed. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
I mean, I've read the draft CTMP, and I think one of my concerns, and it may be that it's not something that you can allay, and I'm being unfair, and the Highways Officer has weighed in on it, but for example, on page 8, excavation and substructure, maximum of daily 4 vehicles for such a small mews is a concern for me, when you also factor in that there are going to be the vehicles of residents, and on top of it the gate is coded. I didn't see any reference to that in the officer's report, and I noted that officers in other reports have said that they attended, and I can't see that an officer did attend for Old Manor Yard. The gate does have a code. And as you can appreciate, with ASB in Earls Court, residents are not keen to have lots of people using the code and knowing it. So is that another issue that you could perhaps satisfy my concerns about?
Thank you, Councillor. So you are correct. It hasn't been set out in Section 4 when the officer conducted a site visit, so I do apologise for that. I don't have that information before me this evening in relation to a date a site visit was carried out. In relation to, you've referenced page 8, I think, in the CTMP, what members may consider is we could add an additional informative. So it's an informative that may draw attention to the applicant team in relation to the controlled access to the site, and that you would expect as part of a CTMP that to be further explored and expanded upon. So we could include an informative to kind of guide the applicant team that as part of any updated CTMP we would expect them to have regard to the specific site constraints.
Sorry to follow up, but just my third concern, as it were, is on page 6 of the draft CTMT. The proposal valiantly is that vehicles will not wait on the street on Old Manor Yard, because it's a private road. Vehicles will reverse in from, it says Earls Court Yard, and then back to the proposing loading area, and then leave in the front, leave in forward gear. My concern is that vehicles will be coming to and from Earls Court Road, which is already highly congested. And so I do have serious concerns that this will create a real bottleneck of vehicles, understandably and rightly, not remaining in the Mews because it's a private road, it's very narrow, there are residents. But the only alternative is to have this conveyor belt of vehicles taking waste, bringing machinery, bringing crew. And their only avenue is to go into the high street, which is already congested. So is there any light that you can shed on that concern of mine?
I understand your concerns, especially in relation to Old Manor Yard being a private yard and the relationship having to be the properties to reverse down and then exit in forward gear. The only kind of reassurance or advice I can give is that the draft CTMP has been thoroughly looked at by the highways officers, and they consider that a suitable CTMP or a final CTMP could be agreed. It may be, as I said, as part of that CTMP that we expect it to be bolstered in terms of its commitments, and if you wanted to find out more information in terms of the times in which or the days of the week, etc., that those works are going to be carried out, then it could be that that's formed part of the CTMP as well. But yes, so unfortunately, it's really just to say that our highways team have considered it, have carefully looked at it, and they're satisfied with that arrangement. But I think it would be worth considering whether an informative could be added just to further emphasise your concerns. It could also be minuted as well as part of this meeting.
Yeah. I was actually looking at this, and knowing Earls Court Road, this looks extremely difficult. So it would have to be a highly developed and sensitive CTMP. I don't know, looking at it, how you would, without a good number of banksmen, as they're called, be able to guide. You're going to have to stop traffic in the Earls Court Road. You're going to swing out over an incredibly busy pavement. You're going to reverse down extremely narrow. Is there some sort of informative that could make sure that local ward councillors are also alerted so that they can liaise with residents? I don't think we're going to be able to redesign it at committee. It's a very specialist thing, but how do we make sure that ward councillors are involved in detail to make sure that all concerns have been carefully mapped out from security and from pedestrian traffic safety and just buildability here?
So if members wanted to have further reassurance that ward members would be consulted as part of a CTMP, we could look to amend recommended condition 8 to add a note to say, as part of a CTMP, the consultation should include discussions with ward members. That could be one route which members could consider. Additionally to that, it may be that members consider it necessary for any CTMP to come back to committee to be considered and decided. So I think it's either you amend condition 8 to make it explicit that you would expect as part of the consultation to include discussions with ward members, or you also minute and note that you want that condition to come back to committee if considered necessary.
Yeah, I think in light of changes that we know are happening, I think that probably the best form of control is for ward councillors who are very diligent in every ward, but particularly in that ward. If they're consulted, then no stone will be left unturned, I think would be the phrase, to make sure that that is able to operate safely.
Yeah, I would recommend then we amend condition 8 just to make it explicit that you would expect the consultation to include ward members.
Councillor Ortiz, this is...
Yeah, can I just ask a final question? It might be one for Officer Ray, which is if I wish to vote against this proposal, but also want to support an informative amendment, can I do both?
I think what will happen is that Councillor Mackover will put the vote to you with the updated condition and potentially with the informative, and then you'll have to make a decision on that. If you don't vote to approve, then you would be against.
Or could Councillor Ortiz abstain?
Yes, or
Yeah.
you could abstain.
Yeah, and then you're not disapproving of the condition, but you are not approving of the application.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think just looking at my fellow members, we are ready to move to a vote. I think that with the amendment of condition 8, which will require this to be given to ward councillors to be consulted. Does that capture where we are? I know there's a number of other things that are routinely informed through the application process. Can I see those in favour of granting with that amendment to condition 8? And those against? You're against, right. Okay, that's fine. You want that noted? That's all right, thank you. Okay, very fair. 25 Flood Street.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Chairman. Again, draw members' attention to the addendum report. The application before members this evening relates to number 25 Flood Street. The proposal seeks planning permission for the construction of a single-storey basement with associated front and rear light wells and pavement light over. There were 3 objections received to this application. The site is within the Royal Hospital Conservation Area. In relation to the site history, I thought it was worth noting that planning permission was granted in 2012 for the construction of a single-storey basement. However, that permission was never implemented and therefore has fallen away. There has also been some other relevant planning history set out for similar basements or basements within Flood Street as set out within section 4 of the officer's report. There are conditions recommended to further safeguard the building and the surroundings in relation to the basement, again in relation to a CTMP, Code of Construction Practice, and the other conditions that we've seen before members this evening. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to those conditions. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And just also noting that it does seem to be a characteristic of the street to have these single-storey basements, both already dug and in the process or granted, and so they're along with the final CTMP. Can we also sort of propose that takes into account other nearby basement developments? There's no point in having a load of single CTMPs that contradict each other or don't take into account the cumulative effect. Just to see how that one would run with you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, just to come on to that. Yeah, the CTMP will need to consider other CTMPs recently approved and also if there are any kind of road closures, etc., with associated construction. So an updated CTMP will need to do that.
Any comments or people ready to move to vote? Okay, so recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Flood Street is granted. Now we have Cadogan Place, Cadogan Lane, which is planning permission and listed building consent. I presume you'll take the presentation together and then we'll take 2 votes.
Correct. Thank you, Chairman. So, as you've mentioned, we've got 2 applications at the same site. So, an application for planning permission and then an application for listed building consent. So, the application site relates to number 52 Cadogan Place and 54 Cadogan Lane, both of which are Grade 2 listed, located within the Hands Town Conservation Area. 52 Cadogan Place is the listed building. So, there is a proposal to demolish the existing Muse property to the rear of the site on Cadogan Lane and replace it with an enlarged building. There would be a basement below this, and there would also be some extensions and alterations to number 52 Cadogan Place, which is the Grade 2 listed building. It's worth noting that the properties along Cadogan Place themselves have been altered. There are rear extensions and rear additions. In addition, the property at 54 Cadogan Lane has been considered in relation to its demolition and rebuild and associated impact to the conservation area and the listed building. Officers are satisfied that, subject to conditions, it will continue to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and its setting with the listed building. In terms of the planning application, there are the recommended conditions as set out within section 9. Again, that includes the Code of Construction Practice, CTMP, and the sweep of conditions for the basement itself. There are also separate conditions set out and recommended for the associated listed building consents, and they are set out within the listed building element of the proposal. That concludes my presentation. Again, happy to answer any questions.
I've got a couple. First is, I'm sort of noting the practical outcome from the conservation team in the amount of change, rebuilding, etc., compared with some other applications that we see, but this seems to be satisfactory. It's already a large site. I think I've read somewhere it's like 9,000 square feet. So what is the net addition of area, just so we get an idea of the scale of extra building, and would it therefore be still liable if it's over 100 metres of additional GIA?
Thank you, Chairman. I have checked this point. It's not going to be seal liable. I may just take a second just to find the figures, but it would be under 100 square metres in terms of seal.
All right. No, if it's under 100, it's under 100. Any other questions from members? Okay. I think this is actually Harold Macmillan's birthplace and family home. So maybe I'll get a blue plaque afterwards as well. I don't know if there's one there already. But that forms part of the listing once it's got a blue plaque. So for the planning permission itself, officer's recommendation is to grant. Can I see? There's one other thing, which is, maybe it's covered in the amendment, that in the sort of Q&A bit, it talks about Saturday working, but in the conditions, which are normal conditions, it's no Saturday working. I just want to clear that up. This is a regular Monday to Friday, no noisy works, no works at all on weekends and bank holidays.
Yeah, that's correct. Apologies for that response to the objection. It will need to comply with the Code of Construction, which is works within Monday to Friday, no works on weekends or bank holidays, I believe it is. And then there's a further restriction for noisy works, so works that can be heard outside of the site.
Thank you. So, yes, officer's recommendation for the planning permission is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Planning consent is granted. For the listed building consent, officer's recommendation to grant that as well. Can I see those in favour of listed building consent? That is also granted by everyone. Thank you very much. 10 Stewart's Grove, SW3.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, just before I begin my presentation, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report, the additional representation received, which has been set out in full as part of the printed pack before you this evening. The application site relates to number 10 Stewart's Grove, which is a property located within the Chelsea Conservation Area. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of the existing dwelling house, so use class C3, to C2, which is a hospital use. The proposal is to use the building in connection with the Royal Marsden, and the applicant is the Royal Marsden, the NHS. The application before members, or the officer recommendation, before members this evening, is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions. There is a condition in relation to an operational management plan, which has been set out within condition 3. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
So just so I understand it, it's being used for doctors to rest or to sleep close to their hospital. Doesn't seem like a very noisy activity. Looking at condition 3, which I don't know why it's there. It seems to be quite excessive. Is that there doesn't need to be. We've seen a massive sort of pub operation without an operating plan come forward to us tonight. But here are two doctors in one of the finest institutions trying to have a rest between work. I don't see how the operation could be so significant that we require an operating plan. It just feels an excessive condition to me. I don't know what others think. Councillor Goldfinger.
Thanks. I was part of the planning application for the hospital. I think a lot of the individuals around there were complaining about increased use of Stuart's Grove, considering the fact that it was such a small mews lane, and the use of these new buildings meant that there were loads of doctors parking out there and using the lane for their own personal use. Is that something that has been seen or identified as part of the issues? Because I don't know if that's been brought up. I mean, in theory, I have absolutely no problem with this at all, but I just remember some residents bringing that up in the main application.
Thank you, Councillor. It may have been included as part of one of the comments in relation to associated parking and some impacts. As part of this application, it really is just the change of use of the building itself. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to control whether a car is parked. And I can see from some site photographs that there are double yellow lines along there as well. In terms of the redevelopment of the hospital's site itself, I have relooked at those plans, and as part of the proposed plans there wouldn't be a connection to this property as well, so there would be a gap between the proposed extensions to the Marsden themselves and number 10 Stuart's Grove. So it is understood it would operate independently in terms of any intensification you may consider.
No, that makes sense. Okay, no, that's perfect. And considering the fact that it will get bigger and we need to actually house these doctors in some way, it makes sense.
And Councillor Dodd-Noble.
Thank you. The change of use is going from residential to hospital. If down the line they want to, go further and start using it for hospital needs rather than just doctors sleeping there, is that something that then comes back to committee?
So it would be a use class C2 and it would be unrestricted, so it could be used for any means of a hospital. So I would say that the size of the site probably restricts it in what it could be used for, but you would need to consider any use or any use of the site within a C2, a hospital use class. But at the moment, it's being suggested that it be used for staffing accommodation.
Okay, and in terms of an operating plan, if you have an operating plan which says this is for rest facilities for doctors, I don't know where that really takes you, because it's simply going to say people go there to rest or to sleep. So it just seems like an unnecessary condition if there's nothing else being planned or actually happening there, and it's not clinical use. What do members think? We don't have to put that condition in? So,
if members don't consider it meets the test, it's not reasonable or necessary, then you can remove that condition.
Yeah, I think there's general consent. So, officer recommendation is to grant, but we are saying with the deletion of condition 3. Does that work in protocol terms? Okay.
That's noted.
With that change, can I see a show of hands? To approve, that is granted. Thank you very much. Sorry about my words, are getting tired now. Next is Fleming Close, Winterton Place, an RBKC application.
Thank you, Chairman. Correct. So this application relates to an RBKC building, and that's the reason it's before members this evening. There have been no objections on the application. The proposal relates to the existing opening, so it seeks to replace the existing windows with new white GPVC windows and the renewal of the existing roof coverings. I would just note that the site isn't located within the conservation area or immediately adjacent to a conservation area, and the overall window design would remain similar to that as existing. Officers have considered the impact in terms of character and appearance and living conditions and recommend that planning permission is granted, subject to the recommended conditions. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions or ready to move to a vote? Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? That is granted unanimously. Next is Gloucester Road, SW7 advertising.
Thank you, Chairman. This application was deferred by the Planning Applications Committee on the 23rd of June 2026, so this is the second time it's come in to Planning Applications Committee for consideration. The reasons it was deferred last time was for more information in relation to the hours of illumination and the nature of the works required to facilitate the shroud. So the application is a control of advert consent, so an advertisement for the temporary display of an externally illuminated advertisement within the shroud on the application building. Further information has been provided in relation to the hours of operation. So the advertisement will be switched off between midnight and 6 a.m. the next day. And the applicant team has also provided more information in relation to the works being carried out which require a shroud or scaffolding. And that's been set out within part 2.2 of the officer's report, which is a mansard roof extension or a mansard extension at the site. That has been further clarified as part of the addendum report, so I'd just draw members' attention to that as well. That concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members? No? Oh, Councillor Ortiz, please.
I just had a question about one of the conditions, and it was the condition on the hours of illumination. Why have council officers alighted on midnight as when it should stop? Because I went to GB10 of the local plan and I can't see reference to why it should be as late as midnight.
Thank you, Councillor. So you're correct. Policy GB10 relates to light pollution, and there isn't a specific timing in that where lights need to be switched off. It may be that that time has derived from the applicant suggesting when it's going to be switched off and turned back on. If members consider that it needs to be earlier in the evening, then you could look to amend that condition. Yeah.
I was going to say this is in my ward, and obviously. It's not one of the dark places in my ward. It's on the sort of corner of two of the largest roads, and I think there are other illuminated adverts that probably have around the same time there. I can't be sure, but it's 12 months, and you know, I think that's probably, given it's Cromwell Road, is probably all right. But it's the right principle definitely to check when it should go off. I don't think it faces many, if not any, residences, and no one's written in to say that it's going to cause them a problem. But yes, Councillor Goldfinger.
I think it is across from a hotel. I mean, I live around the corner from there, so I think it does literally face onto a hotel. So that would be one thing to focus on. But I think you're right, Chairman, it is an incredibly bright and noisy area, and I don't think it would necessarily disrupt the fabric of the community.
All right, so the recommendation is to grant the temporary display of externally illuminated static advertisement. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. Last case is a a different sort of advert. I'll let you explain. If it's recommended for refusal, it's just to get our heads around that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. So the application before members this evening relates to Harrods, so at number 87 to 135 Brompton Road. The application is a control of advertisement consent, and it seeks planning permission, or seeks control of advert consent, sorry, for the installation of a digital display of a facade wrap. The reason it's come into committee this evening is because it's a shroud, and it has also been called in by a councillor due to the officer recommendation. The property itself is Grade 2 star listed and located within the Hands Town Conservation Area. Officers have reviewed the application and consider that advertisement consent should be refused, and that's been set out within the officer's report. Officers consider that the large display screen, even for a temporary period, as what's being applied for, would harm the visual amenity of the area, given its excessive size, prominent position and degree of illumination, especially given the sensitive heritage location, and that further compounds the harm identified. So as set out, the officer recommendation is to refuse the control of advertisement consent. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Can I quickly ask, if this was a static lit canvas advertisement, is it likely that officers would find that acceptable? So it's not the advert, it's the nature of the different form of advert that we haven't experienced before, I think, in the borough.
Yeah, yes, that's correct, Chairman. So this application is slightly different to the one we just considered and have considered over past Planning Application Committee meetings. So it is a digital display, so officers are concerned in relation to that aspect. If a re-application or a new application was provided for a non-digital display, it may be that we're in a different position in terms of our officer recommendation. This would be, to my knowledge, the first that we would have granted within the borough, and officers are concerned about it.
Yeah, and just to note on this very prominent site, there have been large static lit canvas advertisements which have been going since about 2021 while they've been doing restoration works, just reading the pack, which have not caused harm. So the issue with this is it's of a different form that is a departure and therefore is concerning. Okay. And I think the reason for refusal, which you've explained, is actually set out on page 6, just a single reason. Any questions about that? Ready to move to a decision? Okay, so officer recommendation is to refuse as set out. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation to refuse? That is refused. Thank you very much. If there's no other business, I think we've completed the cases for tonight. Thank you, officers. Thank you, members. Good night, everybody.